All right, guys, welcome back to the stream. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome if you're new. Appreciate you guys being here, joining me and Boss today. Boss is here. Don't worry, he's here. He's already trying to bite my microphone stand here. Also, appreciate you guys waiting patiently for the intro to finish up to let more people file in. I hope everybody is doing well today. Still very hot outside. Not as hot today, which is nice. It's been brutal the past couple of days. And so to have a day where it's maybe just like 7 to 8 degrees cooler, I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it definitely makes a difference. Yeah, there are some new emojis, by the way. For any channel members here, I updated the emojis. I brought back a couple, such as Astrobot, that people were asking for. But, you know, just trying to change it up a little bit. So be sure to make use of those. But yeah, today we have more PlayStation topics to go over and discuss today. I'm going to give you a rundown of what we're going to talk about today. There is a dearth of PlayStation news and information, unfortunately, but I guess that's just the way it goes smack dab in the middle of July. There's not actually a lot of gaming news in general, but still a couple of things that I think are worth covering here. Whoa, boss, what happened here? Huh. So, a whole chunk of fur that came off there. But yeah, guys, let me give you a quick rundown of what we're going to be talking about today. So, the first topic of discussion is going to be about the PlayStation 5 Pro once again. This time, how it seems like there is a chance it could get delayed. And I do want to make it known before we even start talking about it that there's no confirmation of this. It has not been confirmed that the PS5 Pro has been delayed. I mean, the PS5 Pro itself hasn't even officially been confirmed yet. But this is worth going over because of who is hinting at a possible release. Normally, this is something I wouldn't cover, but considering the source, I think it is worth going over. But I think it'll also be worth kind of talking about the idea of something like the PS5 Pro getting delayed. Would this be a good thing? Would it be a bad thing? Right? So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about Ghost of Tsushima, one of my favorite games. The reason why I want to talk about Ghost of Tsushima, well, is because yesterday marked the 4-year anniversary since Ghost of Tsushima launched on the PS4. And, you know, I want to go over what Sucker Punch is saying, you know, kind of celebrating a little bit, and just kind of reminisce a little bit about Ghost of Tsushima and talk about the potential for a sequel, what we would like to see in a sequel. Again, not the most exciting topic, I know, but it's what we have today. So there's also another topic that maybe some of you will find more interesting. We have even more PlayStation 5 sales data to go over, and the reason why I want to make sure to go over this is because we've been kind of tracking PS5 sales data to see if it's going to slow down, if it's doing poorly, if it's continuing to do well, even at a time like this. And we did, come on, boss. We did cover sales data for both the US and the UK. But now we actually have Europe's sales data, I believe. Or maybe I have that backwards, actually. No, yeah, we have European sales data. So I want to go over that as well. I do have a fourth topic here, actually, where apparently Sony has been accused of actually increasing the price across the PlayStation Store in a certain region. And there seems to be a bit of confusion going around with this. Oh, is it? You're saying it's the 10th year of Infamous Second Son? Why aren't we celebrating this? Hold on, is that true? Okay, back in March 21st, 2014. So it has been over 10 years. Yeah, Infamous Second Son was a great game. I really enjoyed that game. Again, shout out to Sucker Punch. But yeah, we're going to go over that information. We have a couple of bonus topics as well. If we have time at the end of the stream, which we likely will, we're going to go over these bonus topics. I have, let me see, 1, 2, 3 bonus topics. So this is what we're going to discuss over the course of the stream today, guys. So before we dive into any of these topics, there are a couple of things I want to let you know. First, we will be doing a members lounge after today's stream. So if you are a channel member, please look forward to that. I do apologize. I had no choice but to remove the last members lounge. That's my fault. I did see somebody leaving a comment. They were a little bit upset that they missed it. They weren't able to catch it live. So I do apologize for that. That will not happen again. The reason why that had to get taken down was, well, it was kind of out of my hands. It was because of some of the content I reacted to. I could not keep it up. So I will be much, much more careful about the content we choose to react to in the members lounge. But if you know, you know. So please look forward to that. But yeah, I do just want to thank everybody for being here. If you're watching live, shout out to you guys. I also want to make sure to give a shout out to those of you who can't catch the streams live but watch them after the fact later on. Appreciate the viewership. I want you guys to do me a big favor and hit that like button. We're already sitting at 55 likes, which is great to see. Let's see if we can bump that up to 75 likes. It helps the streams more than you know. It's the easiest way for you to let me know that you do enjoy the content. Now, this channel is completely fan-funded. I do rely on you guys to be able to run this channel, to be able to do these streams. We don't do sponsorships here. You guys are the sponsors of the channel. So there are a couple of ways you can help support. Number one, become a channel member. You gain access to exclusive perks such as the Members Lounge. If you are already a channel member, you can also gift channel memberships. I know a lot of people very much appreciate those membership gifts, and you can also donate a super chat. You can ask a question, give an opinion, make a statement, anything in between. It all helps tremendously. There's a fourth bonus way. There's a direct donation link pinned at the top of the chat. So if you want to donate directly, you can still leave a message. That's another option as well. But just want to make sure I give a big thank you to everybody who supports the channel directly. I simply couldn't do it without this community. Oh man, boss. He's shedding, man. Again. He's got so much hair. It's like getting on my lip, making my nose itch. Getting on the mic too. So yeah, with that being said, we are going to dive into the first topic today, which talks about the PS5 Pro potentially being delayed out of 2024. So we're going to start here with a bit of context. I'm sure most of you are up to date and most of you know. But for those who don't know, essentially, the current rumor is that the PS5 Pro is out there and developers are making games on it right now. Sony is going to reveal the PS5 Pro this September with an announcement of a November 2024 launch. And the sources are very good. The main source of this is Tom Henderson of Insider Gaming, and he's about as reliable as it gets. He's been the most reliable PlayStation source to date. And we have OK coming in here, dropping a single membership gift. OK, thank you so much for that, buddy. Thank you for getting us started today. Add that to the counter there. OK, I notice you've been kicking off most of the shows these days by dropping a single membership gift, so it's very much appreciated, buddy. Thank you for that. Yes, you heard that right. A November 2024 launch. That's the current rumor. Sony's going to announce it in September. They're going to reveal it in September, and it's going to release this November. Now, again, I want to reiterate that even though the PS5 Pro has not been officially announced, there is more than enough proof that it's real. We have multiple insiders, multiple sources giving us all different types of information on it. In fact, we even had the internal documentation that is sent to developers who get PS5 Pro dev kits. That actually leaked out as well. I believe it was Moore's Law is Dead who leaked that, and Sony actually even took his video down. So that's how you know it's real. So the PS5 Pro is a real console that exists, and it is currently in the hands of developers. But now we are getting, I don't want to say an update, because you're gonna see what I mean by that. We are not getting confirmation that it's been delayed, but we are getting the implication that it might be delayed out of 2024. So this comes from PlayStation Lifestyle, where they say PS5 Pro release date window might not be 2024 after all. An insider has cast doubt on the PS5 Pro's release date being set in 2024. We're more than halfway through this year, and Sony has yet to reveal the console, which has been all but confirmed at this point. Fans were expecting an announcement at a PlayStation showcase in May, but all we ended up getting was a state of play. Let me put Boss up here. Come on, bro. He's getting heavy. You're getting heavy, boy. The aforementioned speculation comes from a tweet by insider Tom Henderson, who was one of the first individuals to leak the existence of the PS5 Pro and its specifications. There has been rumblings that Sony has another event scheduled this year, particularly around September. We think wires may have been crossed somewhere, because Sony is making an appearance at Tokyo Game Show 2024 in September, and we doubt that's where it will reveal the PS5 Pro. But when it comes to what Tom Henderson had to say, he was replying to an individual who goes by the name Ben over on X/Twitter. And this person says, thanks, probably will set low expectations for news. I guess September will probably be a decent month, since PS5 Pro is most likely going to be announced around then, ? Tom Henderson simply replies by saying, if it releases this year. Interestingly, analyst Serkan Toto of Tokyo-based consultancy Canton Games has previously suggested that Sony will launch the console in time for GTA 6. Toto believes Sony will want to make sure to have a great piece of hardware ready when that game is out. While it is true that there aren't any major games left to launch in 2024 that the PS5 Pro could coincide with, we're not so sure that Sony is necessarily waiting for a blockbuster to pull the trigger. Now, here's another very important piece of information that this article leaves out, and that prior to Tom Henderson saying if it releases this year, implying that it could be delayed, he actually answered another individual a day or two ago who was asking for more information about the PS5 Pro. They asked Tom Henderson, have you heard anything new about the PS5 Pro? And he said, I've been hearing rumblings, but I can't verify them yet. Now, obviously, Tom Henderson is a professional at this point when it comes to this. He's one of the best in the game here. He's not going to just come out and say something until he can verify it. But what he is saying is that he's been hearing things about the PS5 Pro. He's just not revealing what they are yet, because he needs to make sure that what he's hearing is accurate and is true. So I do find it interesting that if we put these two things together, he says, I'm hearing rumblings, can't verify yet. And then not too long after, he implies that it could get delayed out of 2024. It does lead one to wonder, has he heard that the PS5 Pro might get delayed into 2025? Now, this is the information we have right now. I have a feeling we are going to be hearing more from Tom Henderson sooner rather than later, because if he's hearing these rumblings and he said he's looking to verify them, that likely means we're going to get some kind of report in the next week or so. And it'll be very interesting to hear what he has to say and whether or not it actually is leaning in the direction of the PS5 Pro getting delayed. Now, obviously, this leads us into a wider, broader, more important conversation. And that conversation is, if the PS5 Pro gets delayed, is there even a point to it releasing at that point? A lot of people already feel that a PS5 Pro is not necessary right now. Something that's really interesting about this current situation with PlayStation and the PS5 Pro is that if we look back to last generation with the PS4, the PS4 came out in 2013. The PS4 Pro came out in 2016. So it came out 3 years after the base PS4. We are already approaching the 4th year mark of the PlayStation 5. So if the PS5 Pro does in fact come out this year, then it's already doing so 1 year later than the previous mid-gen refresh console. So automatically, it's cutting it closer to the next generation, unless this generation gets extended beyond 2027/2028, which doesn't seem likely. So all this is to say that people are already feeling a little bit like, maybe we don't really need a Pro console. Maybe we should just wait for the, for the PS6. Maybe that would be the best thing to do. Maybe Sony should cancel it, not release it. Is this thing really going to be necessary? Is it going to feel meaningful knowing that if it were to get delayed into 2025, that by that point, you're maybe going to have 2-3 years max of this console feeling like it was worth a purchase before you're likely going to get extremely excited about the PlayStation 6 and a whole nother generation. I think this is kind of the conundrum, because if you look at the situation as it stands, you have to ask yourself, why would Sony delay the PS5 Pro? Knowing that they're already releasing it 1 year later than they did the PS4 Pro, what would be the reason? Well, it seems kind of obvious. The reason why they would delay it is because they don't have games ready for it. And when you look at this holiday season, you do have to ask yourself the question, if a PS5 Pro launches in November, what exactly is going to be launching around it that feels like it's going to be meaningful, that feels like it's going to be worth paying what I believe will be at least $600 for? Is what games are there going to be? Well, we do know. Oh, hold on. Look at this. Boss actually went to the second pillar here. This is a first. I'm going to try not to pay too much attention. Don't want to freak him out. That's crazy. That's crazy. He's never done that. Sorry, I just got very distracted. He's literally never done that. I've tried to get him to do that so many times in the past, and he just refused. Oh, okay. I guess he just had to go check it out. All right. He heard me. He clearly heard me. It's cool. It's cool. MBG is proud of that second pillar. Absolutely. Horizon Remake. Oh, I don't know about that. It also calls into question, if the PS5 Pro were to get delayed, well, what does that mean for the rumored PlayStation Showcase? Boss is looking at me like he's really waiting for an answer. Boss, I don't know, man. I don't know. I mean, I wish I had answers. Boss, go get a source, will you? Go get a source. Go get a source from PlayStation and relay back to us what they're saying. We have a Heatwave PS5, a member for 11 months. He says, MBG, Sony needs to start announcing things. Xbox had a massive showcase and are trending, and we're getting... and what are we getting on the PlayStation side? Just silence. Well, I mean, I would say half of what you're saying is true. Half. Now, I want to make it clear that I mostly agree with what you're saying here. Like, this kind of objectively, half of what you said is true. Objectively speaking, you're saying MBG, Sony needs to start announcing things. Xbox had a massive showcase and they're trending. The part about Xbox having a big showcase and Xbox, well, I don't know, is Xbox still trending? But, having some momentum, objectively, yes. All we're getting from PlayStation is silence. Objectively false. Now, this isn't in an attempt to defend Sony because I'm going to actually give you my subjective opinion, but just to make it clear, Sony is talking, and they've been talking quite a bit. It's just that they're not talking in the way that most people want them to, and they're not saying things that most people want them to say. It is true that we have multiple games coming. It is true that we're getting new information on a weekly basis about a new PS5 exclusive coming out this fall actually, it would be summer with Astrobot. And yes, as much as I'm loath to mention it, Concord exists. Sony has an obligation to market this game and to see it to release. Regardless of what we think, they have an obligation to do that. And we have, a partner game like Silent Hill 2 Remake. So, and Until Dawn, apparently, and Horizon Lego Adventures. So, objectively, Sony has been talking, and they have, been putting new info out there. But from a subjective standpoint, I'm in agreement with you, Heatwave. I'm in agreement. I just feel it's important for me to separate those two things because I don't want to contribute to the mindless brain rot conversations that occur all across the internet that try to paint things in a singular lane where it's like, oh yes, PlayStation has no games, PlayStation isn't doing anything, and PlayStation sucks. It's like, well, okay, I guess that's one way to view it, but there's more to it than that. But subjectively, I'm in complete agreement. I do think Sony needs to start making more exciting announcements. They need to put on a big show. They need to show that they have plans as well. Like, hey, Microsoft had their big show and people really liked it, and they've got games lined up all through to 2026. Sony needs that as well. And I don't think that what Sony has right now is enough to carry them into 2025. Personally, could they do that? Yes, they could. Realistically, would they be okay? Yeah, they would survive, certainly. But from a fan perspective, from a player perspective, somebody who plays on PlayStation, that would be unbelievably disappointing because I'm not excited for Concord. I'm excited for Astrobot. I'm not necessarily excited for Horizon Lego Adventures. I'm interested in Until Dawn. I'm going to play Silent Hill 2 Remake. I'm interested in that, but there's no denying that Sony is lacking. Sony is lacking this presence, this excitement factor that it feels like it's been gone for quite a while now. And they just seem to, and I think what you're really saying here is when it comes to the silence, I think that's what you're speaking to, Heatwave. It just kind of feels like Sony has been silent when it comes to trying to reinvigorate the fans and generate a large amount of excitement. That I do. I think that's what I would add to what you're saying because that to me is what's missing. And that's why talking about this PS5 Pro potential delay really makes things kind of interesting because a lot of people, a lot of PlayStation fans are really holding out hope right now that Sony is actually going to have some kind of meaningful show in September. We were all expecting a showcase in May, or at least most of us, May or June, and we didn't get that. We got a very weak state of play. And last year's showcase, as we've talked about ad nauseum, was a big disappointment. And so it feels like the last hope in a way kind of resides in September, where surely Sony's going to actually do something exciting, right? Right? Like they're going to have a bigger show with some more exciting announcements. They're going to finally let their first party studios start talking a little bit more and revealing things, right? Maybe there's going to be a PS5 Pro and that's going to make it even more exciting, right? Right? It's like, well, I don't know. Logically, you would think that that's what would happen, but I don't know. I don't know, man. Sony is in an interesting position right now where they don't seem to be very reactive, which is good and bad. It's good because it means that they're not just going to have knee jerk reactions where, for example, if Sony was a reactive company, they would have already put on a showcase to immediately combat Microsoft showcase. Like, oh man, we weren't planning on doing one, but seeing how big Microsoft's was, we got to quickly throw one together, and maybe it would be very underwhelming and it would just make them look kind of foolish, where it's like, what are you doing? So on that side, it's kind of good, where you don't want them to be overly reactive. However, you also have to, you know, you have to make sure you're not becoming too complacent either, where it's just, oh, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. We don't have to do anything yet. We're good. We could just kind of coast. I hope Sony doesn't get like that either, because I do think that the time is coming where it's like, guys, you really got to show up. You have to. Like, it's getting dire out here when it comes to fanfare. Like, it's reached abysmal levels. You got to do something. Not saying like rush it. I'm not, they have the rest of the year, but there is this kind of looming fear, if you will. There's this kind of looming fear that maybe they're not going to do anything. Maybe the next time we're really going to see Sony is with another basic state of play that's underwhelming, and maybe a couple of announcements at the Game Awards. And that's a possibility. Even with a PS5 Pro. I mean, we're all under the assumption, I'm under the assumption that there's going to be a PS5 Pro. It's going to come in the form of a showcase reveal, but it might not. It might be a dedicated standalone event that's just focused on the Pro and games that have already released. That's the way Sony did it with the PS4. So we should keep our expectations in check, no doubt. We have Perfect Image here saying, what if we're looking at a chessboard so they can win? So, or you're saying, like, what if Sony's just basically, they're evaluating the chessboard and they're strategizing and they're kind of thinking of what moves they should make, what moves they could make to quote unquote win, right? Yeah, that's always going on. They're always doing that. That's why I try to tell people, like, Sony isn't as complacent as people think. And that, I think, has been very clearly communicated with their earnings reports and with their, with the way that they've been talking during their business meetings. I've been paying close attention to it, and there's no sign that they're getting complacent. It does seem, however, that there is a lot of strategizing going on. Like, you could almost make the argument, like, are they taking too long, right, to figure out the next play? Or are they, are they going to miss their window of opportunity? Those questions, I think, do come up, understandably, but it seems to me that there's something going on with Sony and with PlayStation that we don't quite understand fully, or something that has occurred at Sony PlayStation that, we're still kind of waiting for the answers. But I get what you're saying, Perfect Image. We also have a super chat from OK saying, or wait, hold on, almost missed one here. We have a super chat from Piper before that says, bro, at this point, Sony will never be able to keep up with Microsoft. They simply have too many studios. You're correct. You are correct about that, Piper. In terms of out-voluming Microsoft, no chance. Sony has zero chance of doing that. They would be very foolish to try to chase the quantity of games that Microsoft is going to be able to produce. However, Sony does still have something incredibly valuable that Microsoft doesn't fully have yet, and we don't know if they're going to have it. And Sony has that kind of prestige and quality level that I would say Microsoft is after, and we'll see if they can achieve that or not. But this is likely why Sony is taking so long with their games, because there's this immense pressure where, listen, and no, I'm not talking about Concord. I would say Concord has done the opposite. The only thing Concord has served to do for PlayStation is hurt their reputation and lower that quality / prestige view that people that they've built up over the years. I think it's safe to say that Concord has done the opposite. But when you think about most of the studios that we haven't heard from yet, right? Think about Sucker Punch, think about Santa Monica Studio, think about maybe even Sony Bend, but Naughty Dog, of course. These are studios that I think it's kind of obvious that these studios are not revealing their games yet because some of them are still a ways out. Like, they need the time. Like, if they're really going to try to push the envelope and raise the bar here, it's not going to happen in just a rapid 3, 4, or 5 years. I say rapid, but that's a long time too. But they're going to need more time. And I think that's why Sony's so okay with giving them the time, because I think for Sony, it really is like, all right, listen, maybe we're not going to be able to put out as many games as frequently, but what matters most is when we do put that game out, it hits, and it hits hard. It's high impact. I think that's the way Sony views it, because if you think about it, that's the best strategy at this point for them. I think it would be almost disastrous if they were like, all right, well, if Microsoft's outputting, like 6 or 7 games a year, well, maybe that's a bit high even for them, but if that's what they're going to aim for, then, we should chase that as well, and we should make our studios double up. I don't think that would be the smartest way to go about it. But yeah, I mean, that's another thing though, right? Is you have to question like the timing of all this. I would say the timing of an announcement at this point for Sony is almost as important as the freaking release, Like, we're kind of at that point now. So Piper, I appreciate the super chat. We also have OK saying PlayStation should be reconsidering the Pro if X2 is 2026. Well, yeah, I think right now, based off of what we know, I think they're committed to the Pro. Could the Pro turn out to be a mistake? It could, yeah. If they do need to delay it for one reason or another, if it comes out in 2025 and there's developers aren't really taking advantage of it in the way that Sony expected them to or thought they would, it could be a mistake. Like, they could look at it and be like, oh man, that we really probably shouldn't have done that. And maybe it would ensure that during the PlayStation 6 generation, there won't be a Pro, right? But it seems like they're locked into it because, yeah, developers have had the Pro console for a while now. And I would say, if all else fails, there are two things that Sony can use to justify the Pro. Again, not to a wider market, but just here's why this thing exists. Okay? The two things are their own first-party games and GTA 6. These two things are going to likely be, if the excitement around the Pro isn't as high, these are going to be the two things that Sony will rally behind to say, here's why we made this thing. Because, yeah, it is true that the longer we wait for this Pro console, the more pointless it starts to seem. But it's easy to feel that way when we haven't seen anything. It's easy to feel like a PS5 Pro is completely pointless, even if it comes out in early 2025, because, well, it's not real. Like, the games that we imagine running on a PS5 Pro aren't even real yet. We haven't seen anything. We don't know what GTA 6 looks like. We have no idea what it would look like on a Pro. We don't know what Wolverine would look like running on a Pro. We don't know what Death Stranding 2 looks like running on a Pro. We don't know if Ghost of Tsushima 2 is going to be announced running on the PS5 Pro. And it's one of these things And I think that this is another reason why Sony is not in a rush. Sony knows how this works. You would think more people would understand how this works, but it's the truth. It's that when people are shown something that looks good and that gets them excited, everything that came before is almost instantaneously forgotten about. For example, once the PS5 Pro is revealed, once Naughty Dog's single player game is revealed, once Ghost of Tsushima 2 is revealed, once these games are revealed, and I'm not saying wait, I'm just saying once they are, no one's going to care about, oh, remember that like 6 months we had to wait for the showcase? No one's going to care. Everybody's going to be wowed, everybody's going to be excited, and everybody's going to be looking towards the future because now they know what to expect. That's how this goes. It's no different than when you're sitting around in a waiting room. I know, not to say that that's what you're doing, but I mean, I'm assuming most of you guys are playing games, but just to use an analogy here, it's like if you're sitting in a waiting room, maybe there are things to do in that waiting room, right? Maybe you got magazines to read, or you pull out your phone, or there's a TV you can watch or whatever, but you're still like aware of the fact that you're in the waiting room. And that's enough to kind of create this bit of like, can we just like get a move on here? Like, I don't want to be in this waiting room anymore. But as soon as you are called back or whatever, you don't even think about the time you spent in the waiting room. You know what I mean? It's gone. It's just gone from your mind. And it's almost like it didn't even happen. I think that that's pretty much, it's been proven that that's how this works in this industry, where even, using Microsoft as a prime example, dude, Microsoft spent like the past 8 years, 9 years, just fumbling and floundering, and they were called out for it. But they had one of their best showcases ever, and it shut everybody up. Mostly everybody. You don't see people, talking so negatively about them anymore. And honestly, after that show, you would never know. You would never know that they had spent the previous, almost a decade struggling. You would never know that. And it just goes to show the power. The scars remain. Yeah, I guess, sure, if we're being dramatic about it. But it's just, it highlights an important, I think, point that people are very easily swayed. And that's the truth. The masses are very easily swayed. Much, much more than I think people would even want to realize or admit. Where once you're shown something good, something that seems like it was worth the wait, then you're on board. That's how it goes, man. And I think Sony knows this. I think Sony that's why they're probably like, it's okay if we wait it out, because once we drop it, we know that people are going to be excited for it. Unless their games end up looking atrocious or something, which, every game going forward is basically going to be Concord. All right, we got a couple of super chats here. Guys, appreciate the super chats. We have 18 May saying we need new franchise announcements from Sony. With the exception to Returnal and Concord, it feels like every Sony game is a sequel to a game on the PS4. I'm in agreement with that, 18 May. And the good news is we did a previous stream. I don't know if you were here for it, but I think it was a week or two ago. We did a stream dedicated to talking about all the new IP that Sony has in development. And it turns out that they have a lot. They have 5 or 6 or 7 new intellectual properties currently in development. The problem is they take a long time. The problem is it's going to be, 5, 6 plus years till we get these games, or even at this point, even get some of the reveals for them. But yeah, I'm in agreement with that, 18 May. It seems like a lot of people are very much eager to, to see Sony come out and be like, all right, listen, you've played the sequels, you've seen the remakes, you've seen the remasters. Here are the new games, like the brand new ones, the big brand new ones. So 18 May, I will say this. If we were to get a showcase in September or a PS5 Pro reveal in September or both, I think Sony would be wise to announce at least one new IP. At least one. I don't feel like that's asking for much. Got a boss hair in my coffee. So thank you for the super chat, 18 May. We also have Piper here saying, but the games Microsoft showed are quality. No, I know. I'm not saying they aren't. I agree. Well, I mean, I'll put it to you this way. Some of them we have to wait and see. Others, yes. Like, so for example, if we look at Doom, yeah, like that's going to be a quality game. It's the third game in the reboot series, and it looked really good. So it's safe to say, yeah, it's going to be really good. I would say games like Fable, games like South of Midnight, these are the types of games that look promising. Like, oh, they could be bangers, depending, right? But we got to wait till we see a lot more or until they drop. You look at a game like State of Decay 3. I think State of Decay 3 has the potential to be high quality from what I've seen. You know, it'll be the third one in the series. Looks like they're taking it up a notch. Gears of War E-Day. Like, yeah, absolutely. The quality is going to be through the roof for that one. So I do agree that a lot of what Microsoft is starting to show, the quality looks like it's going to be there. And if anything, that just adds even more pressure onto PlayStation and their studios. Because if you think about it, all throughout the Xbox One generation, and for half of this generation, or at least a couple years throughout this generation, that is the big flex, I guess you could say, that Sony had that Microsoft didn't. That they could say, look, we got The Last of Us. We got The Last of Us Part 2. We got Ghost of Tsushima. We got Horizon. We got God of War. You know, we have these types of games. And you don't have anything like this. You don't have anything that reaches those quality levels. And, you know, I'm not here to say that, and I'm not trying to make, I don't think you can really make these comparisons realistically because the games in some ways just seem too different. But it's like, look, somebody could say Gears of War E-Day looks like it's going to reach that kind of high watermark quality that you would, you know, a lot of Sony's games reach. I agree. But if it's not just Gears of War E-Day at this point, and it's, oh, and there's also Doom. Oh, and then it turns out Fable's actually going to be a banger as well, and it's going to be like super high quality. That should put pressure on Sony, where it's like, Sony, hey man, look, you got to make sure you don't fumble here, because if Microsoft, looking at it just from a purely competitive point of view, if Microsoft starts to produce many high quality titles like at a rapid rate, and Sony can't keep up with that, like Sony can keep up the quality but not the pace, at that point you could kind of see how there's even more pressure on Sony, where it's like, all right, well look, if Gears of War E-Day is going to be this big, but then they're also going to have Fable and it's going to be this big, and then they're going to have Doom and it's going to be this big, and then, you know, that's just kind of the rate at which it's going. And there's the Indiana Jones game. Then Sony's going to have to make sure, all right, well, look, if we only have one major tentpole title release, it's got to be this big. You know what I mean? Like, it's got to do things that these games are not doing. And I think that's really, you know, that's really what Sony is going to have to, I think, focus on. Because I think ultimately that's going to be the only major separating factor, not just between Sony and Microsoft, but between Sony and everybody else, and third-party publishers as well. You know, I think Sony's going to need that, especially if we go into the next generation with the PlayStation 6, just look at the PS5 Pro. How is Sony going to sell this thing? It may be true that most people buy these consoles to play third-party games, but there's no denying that these first-party titles are really what generate the base foundational excitement. In order for the more casual market to pick these consoles up, it usually starts with word of mouth, you know? it usually starts with the more hardcore gamer that's like, which console do I choose? Here's what I know about this console. Here's what I know about that console. Here are the games that this one has. Here are the games that this one has. And then based on your choice, before you know it, you're talking to your friends, you're talking to your family, and you're like, oh, yeah, I got this console. It's like, oh, okay, I guess I'll get that one too. Can I play Call of Duty on that one? Can I play FIFA on that one? It's like, yeah, okay, I'll get that one too, and we can play together. Now, obviously, there's cross-play. Things have changed. It's not as walled off anymore. But I still think that general notion still exists. It's why you're not seeing Sony put games on Xbox. It's why you're not seeing Xbox just putting all of their games on Sony. It's because that general notion does still exist to an extent. And I think that when we're talking about things like the PS5 Pro, yeah, Sony, like, you're gonna have to show games to get people excited. It's not rocket science. We have Supremacy 101 here saying Sony has had some setbacks looking at Naughty Dog games, their game as a service, and some cuts. So they're relying on second and third party deals. Sony got critique for early announcements. Yeah, I do think that it is becoming more obvious that Sony is relying somewhat more so this year on second and third party deals. We've seen them lean into them, I'd say this generation, certainly, and last generation, but this year in particular seems to highlight, at least certainly for the first half of the year, like more of an emphasis on it. And you do have to wonder how many of these deals are, or how many more deals, I should say, are being made now that, they did have to make a couple of pivots. And you're right, they did get critique for announcing games too early. And we have OK coming in, dropping a second membership gift for you guys. OK, thank you so much for that, buddy.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good stuff, man. Thank you for the continued support with the membership gifts there. But yeah, you do have to wonder how much Sony took that to heart, right? Did Sony feel like they made a mistake announcing games too early? It's worth noting that from what we've heard, apparently some of that feedback came directly from PlayStation's own internal studios, where they actually turned to leadership and they were like, we would really prefer to announce our games when we're much closer to launch, when we feel confident. And I think they want to do this because it takes a lot of pressure off of them, where it's like, all right, we think we can nail it down here, but game development is crazy. Game development is sporadic and all over the place at times, where it seems like, especially when you look at a studio like Naughty Dog, you look at how many times they've had to delay their games in the past. And it's not just Naughty Dog, but they're kind of like the first ones that come to mind. But it seems like in general with AAA games these days, you're just kind of noticing that more and more studios are being much more, I guess you could say, they're being much more mindful of when they're talking about their game and when they're talking about releasing their game. And I do wonder if there's this kind of situation internally at Sony where they want to announce their games. The studios don't feel comfortable yet, though, until they can nail down a release. And so there's just this kind of fear of like, well, what would be worse? Not announcing the game at all and just letting it be hidden and let them work on it without the pressure. Or showing it but not giving any release window. Not even a release window. Not a year, nothing. And I do wonder what I would prefer, right? Like, would I want to see Ghost of Tsushima now? Would I want to see the next Naughty Dog game announced now if there's just a trailer, but not even, there's just no release year attached to it? I don't know. I mean, a part of me says yes, because it would be cool to talk about what we just saw. But another part of me would be like, well, I don't know. Fizzant was announced. PlayStation 6 exclusive Fizzant was announced by Kojima Productions, and we got a logo and a little, video of Herman and Kojima together. Did we need that? Did we need that announcement Maybe. I mean, I guess it's just kind of nice in a way. Like, it's better to know that they got another game deal with Kojima, so that's cool. So like we know it's there, but at the same time, it's almost like it doesn't exist. You know, it's like that far in the background. It's that far in the future. It's practically like it doesn't exist. So it does seem like there's some kind of major shift that has occurred with PlayStation Studios where, you know, they're being much more careful, much more mindful about when they release or when they announce a game. And even look at something like Wolverine. Wolverine was announced in 2021, and a lot of people were thinking, oh, it's going to maybe be a 2024 game. No chance. A lot of people are like, no, dude, it's going to be 2025. It's like, you're all wrong. It's going to be 2026 at the earliest. At the earliest, it's going to be 2026. So you can kind of see when looking at stuff like that, how if you're Sony or if you're Insomniac, you're like, damn, maybe we should have waited. Because think about it. Imagine if right now Wolverine was never announced. What did we lose? We didn't really lose anything. Now imagine if Sony decided, okay, we're gonna announce Wolverine at our September 2024 PlayStation 5 Pro event for the first time. You see, it's saying it would have been leaked. Okay, yeah, that's a good point. It did get leaked. True, yeah, totally and completely leaked. So actually, maybe in this instance, it's a good thing it did get announced early. We have Jakey Steve with the super chat. He says, love your optimism, but something just hit me. Destiny was on the ropes. Factions multiplayer was canceled. Concord is a flop. How much more can they absorb internally? Oh, I don't think... Jakey Steve, you point out a couple of important things here. I think that they absorbed about as much as they could, and I think that's why Jim Ryan's gone. I think that's why he retired. I think that's why Connie Booth was fired after like 30 plus years being at PlayStation. I think that there was a myriad of mistakes that were made in a short period of time, like back to back to back, that just immediately caught the attention of the upper executives that watch over, you know, the PlayStation division, and they were like, okay, this is a problem. You know, like I think that's why, dude, like Hiroki Totoki took over temporarily, and I think Hiroki Totoki was the cleanup guy. I do. I think that he's the money guy. I think that Jim was asked to retire or to step down, and in turn he decided he was going to retire. I think that some leadership was shuffled, such as Connie Booth being fired, and who's the name of the woman that replaced Connie Booth? She comes from Guerrilla Games. Her name is on the tip of my tongue. Maybe somebody can mention her name. I forget her name off the top of my head, but she was promoted to replace Connie Booth, and Angie Smets is her name. And she plays a huge role now at PlayStation, and that happened after Jim Ryan announced his retirement. Hiroki Totoki stepped in. I think his job was to clean everything up. I think his job was to say, thank you, Jim. You know, you made sure the PS5 sold briskly, and it's doing very well. You released a lot of games. You saw them to launch. But this whole, like, look, I don't want to sound like a broken record here, but somebody had said, or a couple of you guys made a joke about Concord where you're like, yeah, those are Jim Ryan's like shitty leftovers or whatever. You know, like kind of talking about Concord as if it's just a huge mistake that Jim Ryan made that now Sony kind of has to deal with. And I honestly believe, like, yes, I think maybe Sony got lucky with Bungie because it was obvious that after Sony acquired Bungie, they were on the ropes, dude. There was like fires going on internally, and Sony couldn't really do anything about it because part of the agreement of Sony acquiring Bungie is Sony couldn't they couldn't manage Bungie. Bungie is like a subsidiary basically, like they're on their own. And it was looking like, oh my God, like this studio is going to implode. And there were reports that Sony was actually kind of waiting because once it got bad enough, contractually, like they were actually allowed to then move in and take over and save it. And I think Sony got lucky that Bungie, they pulled it off. You know, it was like, oh my God, okay, you guys got really close to the ground there. Like you were going down, but you pulled it up, and now you're flying high again. So I think they got lucky, and that's like maybe a situation where Jim Ryan's kind of looking back, like, all right, I knew I made the right decision. But meanwhile, we see something like Concord and Firewalk, and it's just like, dude, it's so bad. Do you know how many people are playing the open beta right now? On PC? Do you know how many people are playing the open beta for Concord right now on PC? Right now, 72 people. 72. This game is done. This game is done before it even has a chance. And I want to talk about this from a broader viewpoint here. Yeah, it's an open beta, by the way, now. You don't need to pre-order it on PC. The beta is open on PC. And there's 72 people playing it. $73 is when you stop watching this. I got a couple of direct donations, by the way. I have something else I want to say, but I want to make sure that I don't miss these direct donations. Our first one is from ACM, who tipped $10. Thank you for that, buddy. You're saying, bro, it's been a cold summer here in Texas. We had more 100-degree days in spring than this summer so far, making me kind of sad. That's actually nuts. And something about that sounds off because it's like the opposite here, man. We've had the 100-degree days that you were experiencing in spring. We're getting that now. I'm in the Northeast, and I'm used to it being pretty hot here, but I'm not used to this kind of heat, bro. I'm trying to like get adjusted to it, but I just keep checking the weather every day to be like, all right, when's it going to go down a little bit? Luckily today it's a little bit better, but I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on anymore. I don't know what's going on, ACM. But either way, dude, I hope you're able to enjoy your summer. And thank you so much for the direct donation. I really appreciate it. Yeah, guys, just a reminder, if you do a direct donation, you can still leave a message just like you can a super chat. Except 100% of what you donate goes to the content creator. So thank you for that. And I have another direct donation from PS Gamer who says, Sony experienced issues during the PS4 era by announcing games too early. Titles like Days Gone, The Last of Us Part 2, and Ghost of Tsushima were showcased multiple times over several years without being released, leading to gamer fatigue. Yeah, that's something that I think we do forget about sometimes is like, do you know how many times we saw Ghost of Tsushima? Do you know how many times? But you know what? Then again, I'll be honest with you, PS Gamer. Like, I don't think I care, man. You know what I think the sad reality is I think Sony did that because they had to, not because they wanted to. I think there was like this kind of assumption that we saw these games so frequently after they were initially announced because Sony was excited and the studio teams were excited to show us more of the game, a new trailer, a new gameplay chunk. And in reality, I think that they only did this because, E3's coming up, we got to do it. You know, Gamescom's coming up, we got to do it. Game Awards are coming up, we got to do it. Now E3's gone, everything's changed. Now Sony does shit when they want to do it, and it seems to me like now that Sony's fully in charge of doing shit when they want to do it, they're like, we're just not going to do it. Sorry. Like, we're going to do it like once per game. And I guess what I'm trying to say, PS Gamer, is that like I was okay with that. Like, I thought that was pretty cool, and that would be, is what I'm trying to say, awesome to have right now. Like, I honestly wouldn't mind if I saw Wolverine 2 times, 2 more times, once in 2022, once in 2023. And I wouldn't mind if I see it again this year, but it's still not coming out till 2026. I actually prefer that, just because it keeps it relevant, I guess. It gives us a reason to, like, you know, tune in, to be excited as a community. And I feel like Sony's dropped the ball on this area, where it's like, I don't know. Listen, here's what I'll say. If it's best for the developers because it's what the developers want, then I'm okay with it. Like, I'm happy about that. I would prefer that. If it's like, listen, we don't want to show our shit. We don't want to. Like, we just want to make it. And we just want to come to you when it's done or close to being done. And you can have a field day with it and market the shit out of it. And the reason why is because it makes it easier on us. Like, it makes us more efficient. It's less stressful. We can be better developers for it. If that's the reason, I'm all for it, because I would prefer that. I don't want to come off as the selfish, entitled gamer where it's like, I need to see a new trailer every year because I demand it, and I don't care if it's too hard for you guys to do that, or it gets in the way of development progress. I don't want to be like that either. And PS Gamer with another direct donation says Microsoft is following a similar pattern, announcing games 5 years in advance, but without delivering much substance. While Sony is now not announcing too early, we are still getting great games and Game of the Year material every year, like the new Sony way. Yeah, I get what you're saying, PS Gamer. I try, again, I'm out here constantly trying to remind people that, look, Sony is talking. Sony does have games, and it's not the most exciting necessarily this year. It's not like, it was kind of sad to me, like in my video that I put out yesterday, one of the major topics we talked about for about 4 to 5 minutes was a bunch of new information about Astrobot. And one of the top comments on my video, and it was just so discouraging to see this, is just somebody being like, I'm not excited at all for Astrobot. Now, I don't know how many of those upvotes were legitimate. I only say this because I've been noticing that certain, like, only negative comments for some reason get like an abundance of upvotes almost immediately. But I think that the person who left the comment, I know that they were real. So I just assumed that it was real. But it was like discouraging to see that, because it's like, dude, like, it's not discouraging to see that, like, I get it. Some people aren't excited for it, but there's this feeling in the air when you read something like that. Like, where you could just tell, like, there's this kind of mentality projecting towards PlayStation where it's like, what is this shit? And that makes me a little bit sad, only because, like, I don't know, man. I just feel like there are going to be times where there are games that Sony prioritizes, or games that come out that, like, okay, they might not be like what we usually get, but something like Astrobot, it's like, I don't know, man. I don't know. I guess I just wonder, like, what would people be saying? Well, that's impossible. I was going to say, what would people be saying if Astrobot was like a really dark, gritty, narrative heavy game? Basically The Last of Us, but Astrobot. Actually, I'd be excited for that. I want to see it. No, but I don't know. I think you guys understand what I'm trying to convey here. I just thought it was a little bit sad to see that, like, man, I think a game like Astrobot is saving Sony this year. I do. I think that, like, sure, it's not the same type of game that we normally get. It's not like the tentpole title. Sony isn't even calling it a tentpole title. But it's saving this game or this brand this year, in my opinion, in terms of like, all right, listen, guys, we don't have Ghost of Tsushima 2 ready or Wolverine. Naughty Dog's game as of right now is non-existent, but we do have a full-blown Astrobot game. And I'm like, okay, you know what? Shit, I thought that this game was coming later, like in 2025 or something. So the fact that this is dropping this year, it's like, okay. And, I'm not saying it's enough necessarily, because I do think that Sony needs, again, to have a show, but I don't know. Maybe it just speaks to the general expectation that Sony themselves have set. You know what I mean? Like, I guess it kind of makes sense the more I think about it, where if you condition people to expect one or two like major tentpole titles a year, and a lot of these games are not, in fact, all of these games are not 3D platformers, but they are as AAA as they get, graphically intense, open worlds, narrative driven. I guess it kind of makes sense that some people, or like there's going to be a portion of the fan base that kind of look at Astrobot and they're like, Sony, what the fuck is this? I get that, but it just, you know what it really makes me feel? It makes me feel like there's supposed to be something else alongside it that it isn't there. Like something was supposed to be ready. Maybe it was supposed to be The Last of Us multiplayer, but it's just weird that, I don't know, man. PlayStation is in a very interesting situation right now that I don't think I've ever seen them in. I don't think it's as bad as some people are making it sound, but I don't think it's as good as some people are making it sound either. I think it's kind of in the middle, truthfully. We have a Piper here with another super chat saying, I'm going to read it as you typed it. We are not going to talk about GTA 6 like it's a first party game. Piper, are you saying that we shouldn't talk about GTA 6 like it's a first party game? Or are you saying that people are talking about it like it's a first party game? I'm just trying to make sure I understand what exactly you're conveying here, because there's like two. I mean, they're similar, but they go in different directions. I guess I'll just try to do the best I can, and with interpreting what you're saying here. It sounds to me like you're saying we shouldn't talk about GTA 6 like it's a first party game. I agree. GTA 6 from top to bottom is not a Sony game. It is not a PlayStation game. And Sony nor anybody else who is interested in how PlayStation as a brand is going to do should view it through the lens of, well, they may as well treat it like a first party game. They should treat it as a powerful game that will do big things for them, but they don't own it. And that's like the most important thing is like, but you still don't own that. Like, this isn't your property. You didn't make this game. And you're going to make a lot of money off of this thing that you didn't make, but you can't kind of put your eggs in that basket. We have a Piper here with another direct donation saying gamers used to criticize Sony for making only one type of game. Now that Sony is trying new games with games like Astrobot and Stellar Blade, some gamers are still complaining it's likely that when Sony announces another action game, they will complain too. Well, yeah, you got to be careful with that, PS Gamer, because see, this is where there's a reason why Sony isn't going on the internet every day and reading what people are saying, because Sony would be completely baffled and confused. Sony would have no idea what they should even do. And this is why I always try to follow the data and follow the numbers. Like when the conversations get too noisy and too confusing, I try to look at the data as a kind of, to just cut through that shit to understand, like, all right, the numbers don't lie. What are the numbers saying? Because I know what Twitter's saying. I know what the comment sections are saying. And and sometimes we have to be able to separate these things, because you're right. There are many instances where people were saying this exact thing, where it's like Sony doesn't have a diverse enough lineup, and they don't, they only make one type of game, but the truth is, not that many people were saying that. It's just the people who were saying that were very loud, and they were amplified. They were amplified on social media apps, on certain platforms. They were amplified, and you could see that you even have to be careful with the data itself sometimes, only because if you see a tweet that somebody puts out where they say, PlayStation only makes the same kind of game and they suck because of it, and that tweet gets like 2 million views and, like 20,000 likes or something, you might look at that and be like, oh man, that data is telling me, like those numbers are telling me that 2 million people saw, like you might look at the 2 million number or the views and be like, oh man, a lot of people. And you automatically assume those 2 million people agree. But if you look at the likes, oh, it's got 20,000 likes. So the truth is, it's like, it's not fully representative. When I say look at the data, I'm talking about follow the money, frankly. Like that's basically what I'm saying, is you got to follow the money. You have to, I've said this before and I'll say it again. Anybody can go on the internet and say anything. Like a person can lie. Like totally inconsequential if they do. I'm going to go shit on Concord. I'm going to go shit on Call of Duty. I'm going to go shit on Xbox. I'm going to go shit on PlayStation. I could do whatever I want, but I don't have to tell anybody what I'm actually doing off the internet. I could go buy Call of Duty. Call of Duty could be my favorite game. I go play the shit out of Concord. I play on both PlayStation and Xbox, and I love both. Or fuck, I'm just playing on Nintendo. So maybe there is some truth to what I'm saying, but it still doesn't matter. You get what I'm saying? Like you gotta be really careful about how much you let including me. Like I'm not saying I'm lying, because I'm pretty honest with you guys about everything, but I'm just saying you have to be careful how much you let people on the internet influence your view of video games and of the industry, because I see all the time, man, like people get caught up in shit. And it's like, dude, like, do you realize that if you just didn't have a Twitter account, like this wouldn't be non-existent to you, and you'd probably be doing something very differently? Chris, I didn't skip your super chat. It's my fault. I'm actually a little bit behind. I keep going on these different tirades here, but no worries. I got a couple super chats I'm still behind. I'm just trying to communicate the message to people that like there's too much noise on the internet when it comes to people giving their opinions, people giving their thoughts, people giving their people talking in such a matter-of-fact way. And in reality, it's like, dude, this is video games. Like, just decide for yourself. Like listen, there are people out there who don't partake on the internet. I don't know that there's many of them, but there are at least a couple people who saw Concord and they were like, this looks great. And they went to go play it, and they had fun, and they're like, I really like this game, and I'm going to play it when it comes out. I said the same thing for Redfall, by the way, before anybody gets on me. I said the same thing, and I specifically said to that, I don't know if you guys remember this, but when I was talking about Redfall, I was like, listen, I know there's somebody out there who doesn't know about any of the negativity surrounding this game. They just thought it looked cool. They picked it up, and they're actually enjoying it. More power to that person, man. I'm not here to shit on that person's parade. If that person is just genuinely enjoying a game that I think looks terrible and that maybe most people think looks terrible, who cares? Like, I almost envy that person in a way, you know what I mean? Where it's like, man, how cool would it be to just not give a single fuck? I mean, literally, almost to be practically ignorant to it, where it's like, I don't know what people are saying at all about any of this. I just go to what I want to with zero influence. Zero influence. I don't look at review scores. I don't go on the internet. I don't watch videos. I don't see trailers. I just go. It's, I guess, really what I'm talking about is I'm like reminiscing about what it was like to be a kid to play games, where you kind of operated in that way, where you just kind of gravitated towards what you thought looked cool, even if you just saw an image or something, you know, or just a single screenshot. And I don't know, I just kind of miss those days a little bit because they were so simple, and it just kind of felt like, it just makes me wonder how many games did I play when I was younger that I actually thought were pretty fine or decent, and I had a decent time with or a good time with, that if I were to look back, it's like, what were the reviews saying and the conversations that were happening around this game? Like, what were people actually saying? It's like, oh, dude, that game's like a 3 out of 10. It's like, oh, well, fuck. All right, so I'm going to catch up with these super chats again. Sorry to keep you guys waiting. Thank you for being patient. Or finish saying that was you 5 years ago. Cypherpunk says, I'll just wait for the PlayStation 6 personally. The Pro is a skip. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think Sony has a bit of a hard sell on their hands with the PS5 Pro. I think if a delay makes it even harder to sell. But yeah, I think the PS5 Pro in and of itself at this point in time is not going to be an easy piece of hardware to sell. I don't think it's going to sell itself. But I've always said to people that like are very much upset, because there are like some people who act upset at the idea of a PS5 Pro. There's no reason to be upset, because if you like the PS5 and you are happy with the PS5 and you have been satisfied with the way games look and play on the PS5, you're going to get that exact same thing for the remainder of this generation. So I don't think there's anything wrong at all with skipping the PS5 Pro and deciding you're going to wait for the PS6. I think that's what most people are going to do. Perfect Image says, also the PS5 controller is very important for the games. I agree most of the time. There are some games that don't use the DualSense as well. And you could tell like they tried, but they didn't quite nail it. Like there have been some shooters that I played, or some, you know, third-party games where you're firing a weapon and the vibration's just like way too strong. It's like, guys, no, it should not be this strong. Like, it's actually like hurting my hand. And in that case, you got to like turn it off. But there have been more studios than not that have taken advantage of the DualSense and done a good job. We have Supremacy 101 with another super chat saying, besides, Microsoft's current strategy of bringing their games to rival platforms in a way bolsters PlayStation's significance in the market. Why showcase, LOL? Yeah, I get where you're coming from with that. I hope Sony does not have that mentality. If Sony has that mentality, they're doomed. Straight up. Like, I can see the logic there, but that's like some Trojan horse stuff going on there, where it's like Microsoft has this super secret nefarious plan where they're going to try to make Sony feel really comfortable, maybe too comfortable. In fact, their plan is to make Sony so comfortable that they let them in and be like, oh yeah, we'll bring some of our games over. We're not competing with you guys. Don't worry. You don't have to worry about us anymore. We're bowing out. And Sony's like, yes, that's right. We win. We are winning. we can't stop winning. You lose. You've been defeated. So now we just get to enjoy the remainder of this generation, do the bare minimum, and look forward to the PlayStation 6. And in that moment, that's when Microsoft basically goes nuts and is like, oh, yeah, we're going to do massive showcases. We're going to have a shit ton of games coming out. We're going to have a massive lineup. We're going to, be working on our next-gen console. Our next-gen console's coming sooner than the PS6. All this stuff where, like, suddenly Sony's caught off guard and they're on their back foot now. I don't want to see that shit happen. I do not. It would be terrible if Sony had that mentality of like, we don't have to worry anymore because Microsoft's been defeated. That would be the worst. Like, I'd say everybody's got to go. Everybody's got to be replaced because that's not what's happening here. That's not what's happening. Like, you can't get complacent like that. Luckily, Supremacy 101, I don't think that's the case. I will tell you this, though. Listen. MBG still thinks competition exists. It's so cute. No, I don't. Listen, I don't even think it's competition. I think it's like a Cold War in a way, where we don't say it's competition because it's not direct competition, but there are things going on a deeper level that the intent behind them, it very clearly illustrates that, oh, okay, yeah, no, there's still something going on here. Not like conspiratorial or anything. I just mean like an example would be Microsoft's showcase, right? Like Microsoft partnering with Amazon, Microsoft, announcing Call of Duty's going on the Game Pass. It's like all of these things are done so that Microsoft can bolster, so they can get ahead. That's why. That's why they're doing this. And it's easy to kind of, and I see PlayStation fanboys on the internet fall for this stuff all the time. Like PlayStation fanboys are like laughing at the stuff that Microsoft's doing. Like, oh yeah, that showcase was weak as hell. They didn't show anything good. And who cares if Call of Duty is going to be on Game Pass? It's over. And like, Microsoft's not going to be really marketing their consoles in Europe and this Amazon Fire Stick. And I get it. But it's like, guys, like these are things that Sony should absolutely be paying attention to, because if the day does come, and it will come, I don't know if it's going to be next generation or the generation after. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, as much as I hate to say it. The day's going to come where consoles are not really as relevant anymore. And there's going to be a whole nother generation of gamers that are interacting with games in a different way. Sony is going to be part of that. They're going to need to be part of that, whether they want to or not. If Sony could have it their way, they would sell consoles forever and be on top forever. But they don't get to decide that. The market will decide that. And these things that Microsoft is doing, I'm getting a little bit off track here, but these things that Microsoft is doing, it's not that Sony should be reactive, like I said, and be like, oh, we should do that too immediately. No. But you need to pay attention. You can't. It's just, so if Sony were to just say we're going to just drive in our own lane and have tunnel vision and not look at anything else around us, we saw what that looked like with the PlayStation 3 launch. That was Sony being in their own lane, tunnel vision, nothing else matters. We're going to do things our way. And they got completely blindsided. So I just think that when it comes to things, kind of trying to wrap this around back to the PS5 Pro, when it comes to the PS5 Pro, when it comes to what Sony may or may not do next, when it comes to the things that Microsoft is doing, when it comes to the wider gaming industry, I really think that Sony, they need to just make sure that they're on their toes, ready, but not constantly reacting, not constantly pivoting and oh, I'm gonna run down this way, but actually wait, hold on, let me go back. What about that lane? Like, they need to have a horizontal approach, not just a vertical one. And that's what Microsoft is doing. Microsoft is doing that much, much, much more aggressively. But something that should be clear to everybody by now is that gaming, in the next 5, 7, 10 years is going to change quite substantially. And whether we like it or not, whether we agree with it or not, Sony's going to be a huge part of that. Anyway, I'm just going on and on here. We have OK with another super chat who says, if PlayStation won with the PS5, what is the purpose of the Pro? I think the purpose of the Pro is twofold. I think number one, money. I think it's, can we get people who bought a PS5 for $500? How many of those people can we get to double up and buy another one? Of course, they're not, they're giving you a more powerful console. They are giving you a good piece of hardware. But I say that not knowing the price. So knowing that Sony will likely not make much profit at all off of the PS5 Pro, it could be engagement. It could be, listen, how many PS5 buyers have stopped playing PS5 as much? What would it be? How many of those buyers would actually come back for a Pro and start playing more on the Pro because it's new? You know what I'm saying? Like, it has that new factor. And I think that's basic human psychology. When you upgrade anything, when you get a new anything, you tend to spend more time with it. And we know how important engagement is to, these companies now in 2024. But I also think that there's another aspect to it. I think it's to hopefully stimulate a bit of a sales boost. It's like we can kind of generate excitement again around hardware. And yeah, the FOMO sales, stuff like that. I think it's kind of twofold in that way, or threefold, if you will, if you're looking at it from the engagement angle. But I get what I also kind of get what you're saying here, okay, where it's like, I think Sony would be fine this generation without a Pro. I do. But there's an angle to this that I don't think enough people have paid attention to. And it's that one of the more interesting things about the PS5 Pro, and this is where the PS5 Pro is going to be very, very different from the PS4 Pro. The PS4 Pro was all about having a more powerful GPU so you can hit 4K resolution. And that's about it. Didn't really go much further than that. The PS5 Pro is vastly different because it seems like it's going to be Sony's first real effort in developing software-based features that could have a significant impact on the look and the performance of games. And when you think about what the PlayStation 6 is going to need as a platform, or as a next generation console, it's going to need standout features. I think people are maybe underestimating how important it might be for essentially the PS5 Pro to be the beta test for the PlayStation 6. Not just from the consumer perspective, where we are going to go hands-on with this technology for the first time, but I think it's going to be valuable data for Sony, where it's like, listen, how big of a deal is PlayStation Super Spectral Resolution going to be for this console? What's the hype level going to be for that? Can this be a major feature we hype with the PlayStation 6? Or is nobody going to care? Stuff like that. I think that, and I think there's more going on behind the scenes as well. To me, it seems clear that Sony and Mark Cerny, like, they're going to want to put everything into the PlayStation 6. Like, the PlayStation 6 can't miss. It's got to be on point. It's got to, again, be high impact. And if Sony wants to have another successful console generation, the 6th generation of the PlayStation, if they want it to be just as successful as the PS4, presumably as the PS5, as the PS1, maybe one day as the PS2, the PS3 was successful, but not as. If they want to continue that streak, the PS6 needs to hit. Sony needs to tell people this is why you're going to care about consoles in the year 2028. And I think that the PS5 Pro plays a kind of vital in between, almost like, it gives them a little bit of wiggle room to kind of experiment a little bit and put like base 1.0 versions of some tech that they want to have in the PS6 and test it out. Not saying that, they're going to market it that way. Of course not. But like PlayStation Super Spectral Resolution, it will be version 1.0 that we get. And presumably when the PlayStation 6 comes out, it's going to be version 2.0. So technically, yes, we will be beta testing that technology because it's going to, there's always different versions. We're like constantly beta testing the freaking, PlayStation user interface and stuff like that. We have Waylark Redux with a super chat. He says, did you see apparently Sony is preventing games being playable on the Steam Deck? No, I actually haven't heard anything about this. Guys, is this true? Super interesting if true. If there is truth to that, because again, I haven't seen anything on that or heard anything, but if that's true, I mean, geez, what bigger proof, what more proof would you need that Sony's working on a handheld than that? That's kind of weird, though, in a way, only because I feel like quite a few PlayStation titles. Waylar, can you tell me where you heard this? Because this is actually quite fascinating, if there's truth to this. Look it up. PlayStation Steam Deck news. PlayStation is not supporting their own games on Steam Deck as Proton support starts to get blocked. The Steam Deck, a portable PC designed for gaming on the go. However, things might soon change as some PlayStation games have stopped working on Proton. This directly affects users of the Linux-based Steam Deck, especially those who are looking to take advantage of these PlayStation titles, foregoing console exclusivity to bring in some PC players. According to a tweet by Pirate Nation, PlayStation games are being blocked from running on Proton, a compatibility layer that allows Linux users to play Windows games. Proton is developed by Valve and is used prominently on their Steam Deck handheld, which uses the custom Linux-based SteamOS operating system. In the video posted with the tweet, the user installed the Concord beta on their Steam Deck. However, as soon as the game was launched, it gave an error. Wine, Proton, and Steam Deck are not supported by this application. Pirate Nation also notes that PlayStation Overlay is blocked on Linux in Ghost of Tsushima. We already knew this because of the fact that co-op multiplayer mode is not supported on Steam Deck. This is due to the need for PlayStation Network, which is presumably related to PS Overlay. Interesting. It says this sudden move by Sony has caused some backlash in the Steam Deck community as many users rely on Proton to enjoy PlayStation's PC ports. This move will affect those who already own such titles the most, as they will no longer be able to play them on their handheld. While we're seeing mixed reactions from the community at the moment, some users speculate that Sony could be doing this to pave the way for a potential PlayStation Portable or PlayStation Vita successor. Yeah, I think this is twofold. That's actually interesting. I had no idea about this. So here's my take on this. This is just off the cuff here. Number one, I think this does pretty much confirm that there's going to be some kind of Sony handheld. Number two, I think it's obvious that Sony is beginning to pivot a little bit with PC and the way that they originally handled it. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Sony is changing their tune a little bit with PC now that Jim Ryan has retired and we have new leadership. One of the more surprising things that people pointed out at the latest PlayStation business event, it was the first one where Herman Hulst and Hideaki Nishino were talking about the PlayStation business, and Herman was asked directly about what's going on with PC, and he straight up said, like, it is our hope that we take a strategic approach with PC because we hope that PC players will come buy consoles. And obviously he got laughed at because that's not going to happen, or at least it's only going to happen in very minimally, like only one out of every I can't even throw out a number, but very few people are going to do that. But to me, that was fascinating because it just seemed like, oh, okay, well, so nothing has changed. Because I remember people were kind of expecting, like, is this they're gonna announce that they're going, they're gonna start putting their single player games day and date, and they didn't say anything about that. Like, they avoided even mentioning anything like that. Now we're seeing something like this done. We saw how serious Sony was, or we know, I should say, how serious Sony is about requiring a PlayStation Network login for multiplayer for PC games of theirs. And I know Sony pretty well, and this doesn't surprise me. Like, I think Jim Ryan may have actually been much more progressive in this area than maybe some people realized. Like, I almost wonder if, since he retired, people like Hiroki Totoki and maybe Herman Hulst and maybe, just basically Sony Japan HQ, they're kind of coming in and be like, whoa, 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 whoa. Hold on, guys. Let's slow our roll here a little bit. We still want this to be what we're doing. We want to be in control, we're not trying to be Microsoft here. And it's interesting. It's just interesting. Let me go check the Concord open beta now on PC again. It's been a little while. 1,200 players, 1,206 players. So a new peak was achieved. This is the open beta. I'm going to keep an eye on this because, I mean, if Concord fails on PC, it makes you wonder, is Helldivers ultimately going to be the anomaly that it only did so well on PC because Sony didn't require PlayStation Network? And maybe no other game is going to ever find that level of success again on PC because of PlayStation Network. But Sony doesn't. I don't know if Sony cares about that, because to Sony, that PlayStation Network integration is the most important thing. Sony's probably going to make a launcher for PC as well. I guess what I'm trying to say is, I have this theory about Sony that a lot of what they're doing to expand the PlayStation brand, I think it's a bait and switch. I really do think that. I think a lot of what Sony is doing is ultimately, for most people, going to turn out to be a bait and switch, where it's maybe that's a bit of an egregious way to put it, but Sony cannot convince me that they don't want to relinquish control. Sony seems to me more look, if we're going to go on PC, we'll play nice for now because we don't have a choice. But once we do have a choice, once we do get our own launcher up and running, once we do integrate PlayStation Network, and I think they proved that, right? Sony absolutely was furious. Absolutely. When they saw the backlash for Helldivers 2 with PSN integration. They were fucking livid. You think that they wanted to apologize? You think that they wanted to reverse that? Hell no. And you look at you saw the way everybody was acting, we won. It's like, you won a battle. You're not going to win the war. It doesn't work like that. Not that I'm on Sony's side here. It's just that you're not going to. They're going to still do this. They're just delaying it, And the reason for that is because this is, I don't know, man, this is just how Sony operates. Sony, you're talking about a company that in gaming started by creating a closed ecosystem based around a piece of hardware. They're not going to relinquish that easily. They're not. And that's why I think a lot of this is ultimately a bait and switch, where Sony still believes that, and again, maybe you could say it's a bit of arrogance, but Sony does still believe that they can get people on PC to go buy consoles. And it's like, look, I don't know if that's going to happen or not. Like, maybe not. I mean, maybe some people will, but I'll tell you what. There are a lot of people that I've seen where they're like, I'll wait. I'll just wait. And I think that works. You know, I think that if you, like, it's not about directly hurting Sony, but I just think that that's kind of I don't know that Sony cares. Like, I think Sony would care about the PC player that says, I'll just wait until it comes to PC. Because I see people get in arguments all the time about this where they're like, well, we'll have fun waiting 4 years or whatever. And it's like, or 3 years or however long it's going to be. And it's like, well, all right, who's losing here? It's like, well, nobody's actually losing. Sony doesn't care because they know, okay, you can wait. We don't need your money right now. We'll get your money later. But there's like millions of people who are not going to wait. So we're going to take their money. And so it's like, I guess I'm just saying it seems like a totally viable strategy. And I don't see why Sony would change that. But when it comes to the Steam Deck, I kind of, to me, the big thing here is clearly they're doing a handheld. Saying Sony's Japanese culture plays a huge role. Yeah, that's true too. Supremacy 101 says, when your rival is already doing the work for you by making, promoting, and porting said games to your platform, does that make sense? I mean, sales are up. Yeah, we're going to go over that. That's another topic we have listed here. Sales data in Europe. Yeah, no, I think Sony is in a good position. In a healthy, like the PlayStation. Here's the fact that some people on the internet don't want to admit to, and there are some people that are so intensely in denial about it. It's like weird. It's like, look, man, I'm not saying you gotta like it or like Sony, but geez, like, you know, you get these like radical people who sometimes are like, Sony's dying, Sony's gonna go bankrupt, Sony's they're spiraling down the drain, and it's like, what? Like, what do you, like, PlayStation's doomed. It's just funny because it's like, yeah, man. Anyway, but in all seriousness, the PlayStation brand as a whole is healthier than it's ever been. And I just think that there are too many people that overlook that when they're trying to analyze and figure out, like, trying to understand, like, why is Sony doing this? Why is Sony doing that? Because we just mentioned earlier how there were mistakes that were made. Oh, what about Bungie? What about the canceled, Naughty Dog game, the live service game? What about Concord? And it's like, listen, failure is always going to occur. Mistakes are always going to be made. Sony's too big. The PlayStation brand is simply too big and too wide-reaching, and there are too many things going on at any one time. There's always going to be failure to some extent. Absolutely. But you have to see the bigger picture. And that's why I always try to encourage people, like, you should pay some attention if you're trying to truly understand. Listen, you're either here to console war, or you're here to troll, or you're here to just make claims and not back them up or whatever. Or you're here to try to actually understand and have some decent conversation about, what's going on in this industry with this particular business. And I try to encourage people to look at the data more holistically, because if you do, the biggest and probably most important takeaway during a time like this, when there's so much negativity on the internet towards Sony, the PlayStation brand is healthier than it's ever been. And it's like, I disagree with anybody who would say, so Sony doesn't have to do anything. I disagree with that because that's not what I want to see. That's not the result I want from PlayStation. I want to see Sony do more. I want to see them do as much as they can for our sake. But at the same time, when somebody says that, that's the first thing that pops into my mind where it's like, PlayStation is in the healthiest position. They're healthier than they've ever been. They're making more money than they ever have. The brand is more ubiquitous than it's ever been. So it's like, it's really, really hard for me to say what I would do, what decisions I would make if I was working for Sony, if I was in Herman Hulst's position or Hideaki Nishino's position. Like if I had all these spreadsheets in front of me, and I don't even get access to all the data, right? I only get the data that's I'm given. But based off of data that's been leaked from the Insomniac hack, like we also learned that, man, like some of the things Sony's doing, like they're fucking killing it. They're killing it. Like they're doing better in some regards than we even realized. And I just wonder, like, if I was in charge, like, would I really, well, considering it's me, I probably would react to the internet. But truthfully, like, if it was my job to keep the business healthy and running and, growing, why the fuck would I listen to anybody? Like, that doesn't, that isn't literally part of Sony PlayStation working inside of this company. Like, why would I listen to literally anybody? You get what I'm saying? And that's what's weird, dude, is like, it's just such a weird situation. Because on one hand, it feels like the fans want something more from Sony that we're not getting. We want fanfare. We want a different type of communication, a more exciting layer of communication that was there previously that doesn't exist now. That's what we want. But if you're Sony, you're like, yeah, well, we're still talking, guys. Like, didn't you just see that interview with the head of Team Asobi? He just gave you a bunch of new information on Astrobot. We just did a state of play, like, a month and a half ago. We're talking to you guys. What do you want from us? And it's like, you get that kind of radical that's like, Sony, what the fuck was that? What are you doing, Sony? And they're just going to, dude, Sony's just like, okay, we're not listening to you. We're going to walk away now. See ya, They're not going to listen to that person because it's like, yeah, dude, Sony's looking at their fucking spreadsheets and they're like, we're making more money than we ever have. The PS5 is still selling great. Like, we're still on top. Our games are still selling. People are still playing on our platform for longer periods of time than ever. People are spending more money on the PS5 than any other console in our history. And so this is where I'm just saying, like, there's something majorly disconnected here. Like, there's just a complete disconnection. And I'm just wondering when it's all going to come to a head and what that's going to look like. I just want to know, like, when because there's something here that's going to reveal itself at some point. And it's either that, my assumption is it's either that Sony really does actually have some fucking wild shit going on behind the scenes that we're not, like we're going to hear, like, in 6 months, a major bombshell report from, like, Jason Schreier, where he reveals that, like, Jim Ryan literally destroyed, like, PlayStation Studios or something, and we're not seeing games from them till next gen. Something crazy like that, and he got fired. Like, it's going to be something like that, or it's going to be, holy shit, they actually were cooking. We legitimately, we just had to wait. We just had to wait. And that's going to be interesting, to get that answer whenever we do. It's going to be interesting. All right. Sorry, I'm really rambling at this point. Cypherpunk, you're saying, why does Sony have to do anything? Xbox is dead and Nintendo does its own thing. Well, that's what I mean, dude. That's what I mean is like I guess that idea of Sony needs to do this or Sony needs to do that. I think it's really just amplified here. Not just on my channel. I think it's absolutely amplified here. But it's amplified, I think, more broadly. Well, I don't know. I mean that's it's tough to really, I think, simply answer that, because as we've had this conversation thus far, you can clearly see how it oscillates. Like, it goes in different directions. And I think it just really depends on a lot of different factors. It depends on who's running PlayStation, how they want to run it. It depends on what the numbers and the data are telling them. It depends on the individual fan who is expressing their opinion of the brand. It's all these different factors. And my read on it right now is that Sony doesn't actually have to do anything right now. Like, they don't have to. They don't. Regardless of what anybody thinks, objectively speaking, Sony doesn't have to do anything. No company has to do anything. But I mean, they don't have to do anything, and they would be fine. They have the rest of this year lined up. Whether you like that, whether I like that, whether the wider market likes it or not, their 2024 is set in stone. And we know all the games that are coming, both third party, or we're talking first, second, and third party games. So if Sony wanted to say, we're not going to do a showcase till January of next year, I mean, that would be very strange, because it's like, who the hell does a showcase in January? But they could decide that, and they would be just fine. They would be perfectly fine. Like, would their numbers skyrocket and go like higher than they ever have? No, but they would be totally stable throughout. And the reason why they would be stable is because they're not turning to PlayStation players and saying, we don't have anything for you. Sorry. They're not doing that. They're not turning and saying, we don't care if we sell consoles. Sorry. They're not doing that either. They're doing the opposite of those things. The only thing Sony might end up doing that I do think would suck, and it would definitely, God, it would be so disappointing to so many PlayStation fans, is Sony could turn to us and say, we're not doing a showcase this year, guys. Sorry. And I would be like, God damn, Sony. So 2025 then, huh? But yeah, that saying their revenue will go down, though, not necessarily. If they do release a PS5 Pro, but it doesn't have a showcase, they just have a PS5 Pro event, and we get older games like Spider-Man 2 and God of War and shit that are getting enhanced, Gran Turismo, right? Like, people will buy that Pro. There will be third-party games that will take advantage of it, and that will greatly increase their revenue. So this is where it's like, I'm not saying don't expect Sony to do anything. I'm just saying that when I see these super chats of people saying, like, listen, why does Sony have to do something? They don't. Like, Sony can, I mean, don't get me wrong, like, they're going to do something. They're going to do a state of play, at least one more before the end of the year, at minimum. If the PS5 Pro doesn't get delayed, they're going to have to at least reveal, even if it's through a freaking blog post, they're going to have to reveal it. But they can't just do literally, well, they can do nothing, but they're not going to literally do nothing. They could do the minimum, is what I'm trying to say. And I don't know. I don't know. If that's what happens, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. We have Chris Brown here with the super chat. And he says, maybe Sony doesn't care right now because they already know and have deals for more Xbox ports. Maybe they don't feel any rush at the moment and have time. That's actually a really good theory. Something we do need to keep in mind is that Sony knew well in advance these 4 Xbox games that were coming. Sony knew in advance that they were coming, like months and months before anybody else did, other than Microsoft. There was that story about how Sea of Thieves, right? Like Rare was actually helped by Sony, and they had a dedicated room with like tinted window, or not tinted windows, like basically like windows you couldn't see through because it was that top secret. And Sony knew like that far in advance. Sony was actually helping them port it. So that's actually a great theory. Oh, hold on. That's actually a really good theory and something I didn't think of because, I mean, we've gotten all these reports of like, oh, Gears is coming, Halo is coming, blah blah blah. Indiana Jones, and of course, we don't know if any of that's true. But if it were to be true, Sony would know that. Like Sony would actually see, holy shit, they're actually bringing these games over. And again, I do worry that's a bit of a Trojan horse situation, but at the same time, is it if they're actually bringing the games over? And if you're Sony, I mean, Christ, man, like the way I see it, if this is just a hypothetical, and I don't think this is going to happen, but if it turns out that Microsoft really is like, yep, like we're bringing it all. It's just not all happening at one time, but we're bringing it all. It's going to happen over the next 3 to 4 years, or like 2 to 3 years. And Sony knows that, dude. If you're Sony, like the truth is, man, if you're Sony, you don't do fucking shit. I hate to say that. I absolutely hate to say that. But that's the truth, man, is you don't have to do jack shit other than the bare minimum. Like just the absolute, here are the rest of the games we promised for the PS5. PS5's done, dude. At that point, you move to the PlayStation 6. As shitty as that sounds, that's the truth, man. Because at that point, Microsoft closes out the PlayStation generation, which is, that doesn't even make sense. Like that's a total, I don't even know how it would get to that point. But yeah, I think that's what would happen, man, is Sony would basically just be like, okay, well, look, we got Death Stranding 2 for 2025. We got Wolverine for 2026. Maybe they have Ghost of Tsushima for 2027, which seems kind of far out, but maybe that's their tentpole lineup. I mean, dude, what did Herman Hulst say? I think it might be in front of us, guys. Like, I'll be honest with you. I keep thinking about that that business meeting that Herman Hulst had recently. And that business meeting, the most important thing to understand about it is it was covering up to the PlayStation 6. They didn't mention the PlayStation 6. Obviously, they would never mention it by name. But it ends fiscal year 2027. Their business plan that they laid out ends fiscal year 2026. In other words, it ends April 1st, 2027. What do you think we're going to be talking about come April 1st, 2027? What do you think we're going to be talking about? Now, I just want to make note that the reason why I'm saying this is Sony said we're going to have one tentpole title. PS5 user saying, I became a channel member. At least recognize me, bro. You know what's really weird, really quick? It says that I have 3 members, but it didn't come up. Like it says here that there's 3 new members. So, PS5 user, I thank you, I guess. Like it's not showing on my end. I didn't get a notification. It doesn't show a badge, but it does say here I have 3 new members. And don't worry, I didn't skip anybody's super chat. KazJam, you're actually next up. Yeah, very strange. I don't know what's going on there. So, sorry, if you did actually become a member, man, it's from a different account. All right, well, appreciate that. Thank you, buddy. Definitely appreciate the support. But I'm mentioning all this because I think that it might already all be laid out in front of us. It's just that, most people are not tuning into these business meetings or anything, but it's just interesting that it's like, okay, listen, we're going to tell our investors what we're doing up until April 2027. And one of the things we're going to let them know is one major tentpole title release each year. So that means 2025, one major tentpole, 2026, one major tentpole, 2027, one major tentpole. I don't know. Is the PlayStation? It's just interesting to me. It's just interesting. That's all. And you do have to wonder if part of this business plan was it constructed with the knowledge that, yeah, there's a bunch of other Xbox games that we know are coming, but they haven't been formally announced yet. I mean, I don't know. All right. Kaz Jam with the super chat says, I wish Sony would release some smaller games in between the AAA releases so that we're not waiting forever for a couple of games. Well, I guess it depends on whether or not you mean you wish that they would release some smaller first party games, because I would say that Sony's been releasing a lot of games in between their big first party releases. I just think that most of those are coming from second and third party partners. But if you're talking about from first party, yeah, I can understand where you're coming from. A lot of people talk about all this IP that Sony owns that they don't leverage, that they don't use, and it's just kind of sitting there rotting or waiting. So I don't know. I guess maybe the idea is getting more Astrobot-esque games, more Ratchet and Clank-esque games in between the things like God of War and Spider-Man and Ghost of Tsushima. I would be up for that too, and I think Sony is working towards that. I do. I think that's actually what they're ultimately working towards, but I think it's proving to be a little bit difficult for them in terms of consistency, just because I don't think that they have too many studios that are working on what we would consider smaller titles. Saying, or even games like Journey. Well, like I said, man, we don't know anything about the 2025 lineup for Sony except for Death Stranding 2. So surely Sony has multiple games that are set to release next year for PS5 that could be smaller titles, kind of like what you're saying here. We have Venino saying if Astrobot was a Switch game, nobody here would care. I mean, yes, and yeah, probably. I say that. Well, no, I think some people here would care. There are definitely Nintendo fans here, people who love Nintendo and play on the Switch. But I guess that's just an awkward. That's an awkward situation because, I mean, Astrobot is PlayStation. Like, that's what's weird. Like, like literally everything about it is like PlayStation. I think a more interesting question would be how many PlayStation fans would care about Astrobot as a property if it wasn't literally ingrained with PlayStation nostalgia. Do you get what I'm saying? If Astrobot was just a standalone platform where there was no callbacks to PlayStation, there was no PlayStation symbolism, no PlayStation characters, it's just Astrobot and a unique cast of characters, I do think it would probably be less, because I won't lie, for me, a major draw of Astrobot, it's the fact that it's blending both. It is its own thing that stands out on its own, but the fact that there's, like, when I go to play that game, I know around every corner there's going to be some kind of nostalgic surprise. You know, it definitely makes me significantly more excited for it. We have Masood Alemi. Sorry if I butchered your name. Member for 13 months says, MBG devs want to show their games once or twice close to release. Remember how much developers suffered each time they showed The Last of Us Part 2, mentioned in Grounded 2. Yes. That's Yeah, I tend to forget about that, but you're absolutely correct. And if you I really do think that if we want to truly understand what's going on, I think all we have to do is look to the Grounded 2 documentary. Because when we see that every time they had to get a vertical slice ready for E3 or PlayStation Experience, it completely halted development, dude. Like it halted development. It became an unbelievably stressful endeavor, and they basically just had to focus on that and that alone. And there was definitely this energy conveyed that like they couldn't stand it, that it really genuinely interfered with their development. Um, and that very well could be why. Yeah, they only want to show it once or twice. We also have Alan L. Ghoul here who says Concord is doing good. PS5 on Twitch, stat stream. What is this? There's like marks here not letting me read. 113 players were testing the game. You can Google it. I mean, look, we'll see, man. I don't want to make any more predictions about Concord, truthfully. The only prediction that I've really made is that I don't think Concord's going to be a big success. I think it's going to struggle. And that's how I feel. I also want to add to that it could have its own self-sustainable player base on PS5 and maybe PC. But generally speaking, considering what Sony is trying to go after, Sony's trying to find like real success in live service. I mean, like big success, not real success, but like big success. I don't know that Concord is going to be that, and I don't want to make any more predictions about whether it's going to like. It just too many people are fighting about it, and I'm like, let's stop fighting about it and just wait and see. Truthfully, people are saying this game's going to flop. It's DOA. People are saying this game's going to be just fine. People are enjoying it. People like it, and what I say is, this game has less going for it than most other games. Certainly most other PlayStation games. And I don't think it's going to do well. Let's wait and see what the results are. We have a perfect image here says when it comes to consoles, pay attention to CPU chips. Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what Sony decides to do for the CPU in the PlayStation 6. A lot of people that are not excited about the PS5 Pro are not excited because they they kind of heard that the CPU is going to be the same, get like a 10% boost, and I feel like there's really not, it's not going to do much there. We have OK here with Super Chat saying the Xbox/Nvidia streaming partnership is a big deal. Yeah, I did see something about that earlier, although I didn't really look into it too much. But yeah, Nvidia is huge and Microsoft's huge, so this could be big for them. Microsoft's making a lot of different moves outside of the console, and it tells me that they are really trying to play the field here and see where they can find success. So this is something that we'll have to maybe pay a little bit of attention to and see where it goes. We have Josh Z here with the Super Chat saying Sony hardware is as valuable to them as Nintendo IP is for them. They want to control the things that they pioneered. Yeah, I'm in agreement with that, Josh. I don't know if the day will come where hardware is truly like taking a back seat for Sony and for PlayStation, but that day is not today. I don't think that's going to be tomorrow or anytime soon. I think it's clear that hardware is going to be the central focal point for many, many years to come for PlayStation. And most importantly, and I do believe this, I think Sony will actually fight as hard as they can to keep hardware relevant. Like, I don't think if there are signs of a decline, they're just going to give up and be like, well, I guess this is done. I don't think they're going to do it that way. I think they're going to try. I think that they're going to try. And if they don't succeed after trying, then maybe they'll have no choice. But I agree, Josh. We also have Rich Rod 908 making me read this atrocious chat. Gangsta A22 Gab Gangstas, MB Gangstas, Screw Colt Eastwood, Xbox Wangstas mad because Xbox. Oh, I realize you're saying ass. Okay. Took me a second. PS Gangstas stand up. Jesus, man. MB Gangstas stand up. Colt sucks. Okay. Thank you, Rich Rod. My God. Rich Rod, what are you making me read here, man? What are you making me read here? Yeah, stop making me suffer, dude. Stop making me suffer like this. Why are you doing this to me? And we have Morgan Anstein coming in, dropping a 5 bomb on you guys. Morgan coming in out of nowhere, gifting 5 memberships. Love to see it. Morgan.
It's dangerous to rely on.
I'm going to give you Mark
teraflops
Cerny.
as an absolute indicator of performance.
What else do I got here? Hold on. I don't.
Boasty, read me. It's
Oh,
time
wait,
to
that was
feed
the wrong one.
beast.
It's not time for that yet. I hit the wrong one. But Morgan, thank you so much for that. That brings us up to 8 members on the day. Guys, our goal today is to try to get to 25 members. I don't know if we can, but if we do, we will we'll feed this guy here a couple treats. Yeah, he's knocked the F out right now, which is good. But let me update this goal and finish with these super chats, and then we do have to move on to the next topic. I spent way too long. I mean, this one topic basically turned into like 6, which is okay. Sometimes that happens when we have a lot of super chats. Dark Horse with 2 super chats here, and then we're all caught up, says, what's up, MBG? Thoughts on Sony canceling the PS5 Pro? They didn't cancel it unless some news came out that I missed. The rumor currently, and it's a light rumor. I call it like a rumor light. I don't know. It's not a direct rumor, but there is an implication from Tom Henderson that it's going to get delayed potentially into next year. And we should be hearing about it. Boston leg hang mode, yeah. And then your second super chat here says, Concord, if Concord does not succeed, should Sony shut down Firewalk? I mean, should they shut down Firewalk if Concord fails? No, I think, truthfully, they should give Firewalk at least one more chance. If Concord is a complete flop, I think that they should if not hand them a known property, let them make a new game, but a very different game. And then if that one also fails, maybe shut them down. But yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. I will be honest, if the game fails as bad as some people think it's going to, I could see them shutting them down. I don't think Sony's here to play around. All right, guys, listen. I want you to do me a big favor before we move on to the next topic here and hit that like button for me. Okay? Hitting the like button lets me know you guys are enjoying the content, and it helps the streams out a ton. So let's see if we can get up to 150 likes. I want to move on here and talk about Ghost of Tsushima briefly. I don't have a whole lot to say here, and truthfully, there's hardly like any PlayStation related news or topics. I mean, we basically went through 5 different topics here, which is good from super chats. But I just want to let you know that Sucker Punch put out a post. They don't really post that much. And they said, today marks the 4-year anniversary of the launch of Ghost of Tsushima. It's been a wild ride since then, including Legends, the Director's Cut, and the recent PC release. We are constantly humbled by the outpouring of love for our game, and we sincerely thank everyone who has played. Obviously, not a major announcement, but just want to take a moment to highlight that, man, it's been 4 freaking years since this game launched, and it really kind of doesn't feel like it's been 4 years. It also makes me think that a sequel announcement has to be imminent, right? I want to ask you guys this real quick. Do you think Ghost of Tsushima 2 is getting announced this year? Or do you think it's not happening this year? Do you think the announcement is it's not meant for 2024? What do you think? You're thinking 2025, honestly? Or if you're saying it's been 4 years this time? I've seen multiple people saying they think it's going to be 2025. Yeah. I mean, like, there's a part of me that really wants to hold out some kind of hope that Ghost 2 is going to get announced this year. It's okay if it doesn't. Really quick, Morgan says, 2 days ago, my uncle that just got into PlayStation gaming asked me for game recommendations, and that's the first one I could think of. That game is amazing. Yeah, that's a good recommendation, honestly. Ghost of Tsushima, it's I would say it's pretty accessible to people just getting into gaming. Like it's definitely not the simplest game in the world, but it's it's one of these things where I think it's relatively easy to pick up, you know. I really here's my thoughts. I feel truthfully like if Sony wants to really get people excited for the PS5 Pro, and if the PS5 Pro is actually coming this year, I think you announce Ghost of Tsushima when you reveal the PS5 Pro, and you show that trailer and it says like running on PS5 Pro. I really do think that. I think that would be like a kind of like 1-2 punch. Maybe it won't be ready though. Ghost of Tsushima 2 could be much further out. You're saying maybe that's why they will delay the PS5 Pro? Yeah, that's possible as well. Dan, you're saying I don't know, but Sucker Punch isn't known for raw fidelity graphics. That's true. That's true. I think Sucker Punch is like they seem to know how to leverage art style to make up for just the raw graphical fidelity. Because, I mean, Ghost of Tsushima looks incredible, but there's no denying that in some areas of the game, it's not, it's not like up there with the highest fidelity games. But you see how amazing the art style is and how much it pops. And the color palette. And I think that these things really help to elevate it. And I don't know. It would be cool to see that. If Ghost and Wolverine are 2026 releases, then that's a big problem for Sony. It depends. It depends. The real question is if Sony's going to have anything ready to go other than Death Stranding 2 by 2025. It would be funny. It's like the PS5 Pro is revealed and Ghost of Tsushima does show up, but it's not a sequel. It's actually just a PS5 Pro enhanced Ghost of Tsushima 1. I wouldn't be very excited for that. I feel like that would be pushing it too far. But yeah, man, I'm really happy to see Sucker Punch celebrating the 4th year anniversary. It is kind of crazy to think when you look at their or when you read their post, I mean, kind of easy to forget that they really did do a lot with Ghost of Tsushima, man. Like they had the Legends multiplayer, which I actually forgot did not launch with the game. It came a little bit later. They did the director's cut, which I played. I got the platinum for that. and they did a PC release. Although I think that was mostly Nixus, but it's just interesting to think, like, you look at that, that's 3 separate things outside of the actual game launch that they did for the Ghost of Tsushima IP, all while probably developing a sequel. Jack, you're saying Sony said they want a tentpole title every holiday season. If not Ghost of Tsushima 2, which game will be a tentpole title for holiday 2025? I think it's going to be Death Stranding 2. Yeah, that's definitely considered a tentpole title. Oh yeah, that's true as well, Irfan. Yeah, they didn't list that. The DLC, the how do you pronounce it again? Iki Island. You think it's going to be Wolverine? I mean, unless if they made like really good development progress, it's possible. But I'm thinking Wolverine's probably going to be closer to 2026. Like, I think it's pushing in that direction. JMR77 says, MBG, can you put up a poll about who's excited for Death Stranding 2? I will when we get some new information. Like the next time we do a stream where Death Stranding 2 is the focal point of the conversation, I'll definitely put that poll up. Yeah, I think this is going to sound a little crazy, but I'm almost starting to think that Ghost of Tsushima's sequel could be the swan song for the PS5 as well. You know, the original launch of Ghost of Tsushima was the last major first-party launch on PS4, and it was the swan song for that console. I think we could see a repeat. I know that sounds crazy because that means it would be like 3 years out, but I'm trying to just accept that some games are just going to take longer. Like, I mean, what would have to happen with Ghost of Tsushima? Like, maybe they're making a new engine for the game, dude. Has anybody thought of that? I mean, that's something I've tried to consider, where Sucker Punch is using their own bespoke engine. So it's like, maybe with transitioning to the PS5, they're like, we have to like really overhaul this thing. And maybe that took some extra time. Saying that's not crazy, MBG. I think it's realistic. There's also the idea, if it's, you know, if you think about something, think about God of War Ragnarok. Think about Spider-Man 2. You know, these games were basically kind of reusing areas, and all they really had to do was just kind of touch everything up, like bring everything up. Not to say that that made the games any less good. It definitely didn't. But when I think of like Ghost of Tsushima, I'm thinking, well, it's not going to... The sequel probably won't be called Ghost of Tsushima. It'll probably be called Ghost of something. Right? So it'll probably take place in a completely different location. And because of that, they probably have to like develop a whole other open world from scratch. So I'm thinking like maybe these are some reasons why Ghost of Tsushima could come a little bit later than we think, but I'll still be holding out that kind of hope. There's one thing here that really makes me think we are going to see Ghost of Tsushima this year, and it's the fact that the PC release came. I think that they purposely timed the PC release when they did because they want PC players to go play it, enjoy this story, enjoy this game, because later this year, we're going to show the sequel for PS5 and maybe even PS5 Pro. So I'm still holding out hope that we are going to get the Ghost of Tsushima sequel announced this year. Rise of the Ronin serves as a stopgap. Yeah. Agreed. Saying Naughty Dog spent 6 years on The Last of Us 2, which has a new engine, and that game wasn't open world. True. That's true, yeah. The Beast Awakens. You're saying you really hope so. Ghost 2 is your most anticipated announcement. Yeah, it's up there for me as well. It's easily one of my most anticipated. For sure. Renna says, oh my god, I just joined the stream and got rewarded with a cat yawn. Yeah, he was like knocked out here for a good while. He's just waking up now. He's sneezing a lot too. Boss, you got allergies? What's going on? Sheesh. Anyway, sorry, boss, just distracting me once again. We have Ghetto God here. Remember, for 14 months, he says, Jin Sakai is the ghost of Tsushima. It doesn't matter where he is, that's who he is. If it's ghost of somewhere else, it would be a different protagonist. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this before. The idea of, like, you know, a sequel to Ghost of Tsushima, like basically it kind of being like Assassin's Creed, where each time it's in a different location with a new protagonist. What do you got? I don't know. I really don't know which way I lean here, because Jin was a really cool protagonist, but I could also, I don't know. I think I would also be open to the idea of, like, it's a new location, a different time period. Like, I guess what I'm trying to figure out here is, could Sucker Punch basically turn Ghost of Tsushima into Assassin's Creed, where it will just be Ghost of, right? Like, every new game, there's going to be a new location, a new main character, a whole new story, whole new time period, and it'll just be Ghost of. And then they'll have like all these different protagonists. What do you guys think of that? Would you want to see that? I mean, the one really cool thing about that is it would kind of give Sucker Punch a massive amount of freedom where they could really do anything, any time period, any type of combat, any type of story. But at the same time, Ghost of Tsushima was done so well. But I have to burst anybody's bubble here. The thing is, if you look at job listings, it's still going to be feudal Japan. Yeah, there were multiple job listings where they were basically telling anybody who was hired that they have to be familiar with feudal Japan and Ghost of Tsushima, like the game, the combat, the mechanics. So I'm thinking it's still going to be Jin, and I'm thinking they're gonna stick to that. But it was just kind of interesting to think of this notion of, like, they could go the Assassin's Creed route if they really wanted to. You could do Edo period with the descendants of Jin. Don't forget the Shogun is about to go after Jin, MBG. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think we're still going to see Jin. I think we're still going to see him. Well, either way, it's been 4 years since Ghost of Tsushima launched on PS4. Yesterday, Sucker Punch celebrated the 4-year anniversary. A lot of people eagerly anticipating their next game, their next announcement, me being one of them. And I hope it happens this year. If it doesn't happen this year, I'm okay with that. You know, I'd rather them take their time. Don't want to rush the greatness, but if we did get a proper reveal this year, that would definitely be the most hype moment of the year, no doubt about it. But we are going to move on to the final main topic of discussion here. It's going to be pretty brief, but I did promise you guys that I would go over this information. We'll probably have a video out tomorrow covering this as well, because I know not everybody tunes into the streams, but we have the European sales data. A lot of people are wondering what is going on with PS5 sales. Are they truly slowing down? Are they speeding up? Are they just, kind of staying the same? What's going on here? What's the data saying? Well, in the US, the PS5 is still doing great. It's actually outpacing the PS4 by 8%. In the UK, it's slightly down. Not severely, just slightly. And in Europe, we're going to find out. Really quick, though, we have OK here with a super chat saying, started Ghost of Tsushima on PC, but waiting for more patches because its PS4 engine isn't optimized well for PC. Sucker Punch likely building new, bigger, future-proof engine for PlayStation 6/PC. Yeah, that's interesting. I appreciate you giving insight there because, I haven't played Ghost of Tsushima on PC. I did remember reading, though, that, Nixus had to work on this because, the engine that was created for Ghost of Tsushima, and I don't know, I'm assuming it was the same engine that was used for Infamous Second Son, maybe? Or maybe that was a separate engine as well. But the engine was built around a console. PC was not part of it. That would make a lot of sense, right? The idea of creating a more future-proof engine that can be better optimized for PC, but also for PlayStation 6. Maybe that's why it would take so long. Yeah, we're going to find out, man. I'm going to laugh. Dude, I'm going to laugh when Ghost 2 is just like a PlayStation 6 game. How wild would that be? It's not the craziest thought. I mean, it would be a little disappointing, I think, for people, but crazier things have happened. Ooh. All right. So let's go over the European data. It says for the first half of 2024, sales of the PS5 are down 16% year over year. While this may sound like a cause for concern, it's worth noting it's still comfortably the region's best-selling console, and it's competing with a particularly fruitful period. In the early months of 2023, Sony widely promoted the platform's availability after years of stock shortages. With that crucial context, some degree of decline was to be expected. It should be noted that in comparison, the aging Nintendo Switch slipped 32% year over year, while the Xbox Series X and S, which is having a particularly tough time in the continent, declined an eye-watering 37%. Despite the slip in hardware sales, software continues to perform reasonably. Despite the comparatively weaker selection of new releases, only 2 titles actually released in 2024 managed to make the top 10 for the first 6 months of the year: Helldivers 2 and The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. However, it should be noted that Palworld, a game which almost certainly would have charted otherwise, is inexplicably excluded from these results. So that's kind of weird. But PS5 sales down 16% in Europe. Now, let me check here. I'm just trying to check how well. Yeah, so here's some context, and this is pretty important context. I have the sales data from this time last year. Wait, no, hold on. This is actually even later. Hold on. I want to see what the sales were in oh my god. Okay. Yeah. So here we go. July 19th, 2023. PS5 sales spike a staggering 116% in Europe. So this is why it's important to look at this data, because it says PS5 hardware sales spiked an impressive 116% year over year in Europe during June, as Sony's console continues to make up for the shortfall it experienced during stock shortages. Last year, yeah, dude. Yeah, so there was no way they were going to be able to match that. But yeah, so you can kind of see how things are beginning to offset a little bit, where last year there was this ridiculous spike of plus 116% due to the shortage. And because of that, you know, now that everything, you know, the demand has been satiated, we are now seeing a negative 16%. But in reality, it's still selling very well. It's just not selling like it's been in demand for 2 years with, you know, a stock shortage. It's not doubling anymore. No, definitely not. This year's PlayStation's 30th anniversary, they'll go all in with announcements. I hope so. But yeah, Helldivers 2 staying on the charts for 6 months. The Last of Us Part 2 as well. Yeah, nothing here that's too exciting, but all in all, we now have the data for US, Europe, and the UK, and the PS5 is still doing really good. It's really not slowing down that much. It's not doing as well, obviously, comparative to last year, but right now there's no like major sign of a huge like wall being hit or anything like that. But it does feel like, at least in Europe, maybe it's slowing down enough to where Sony would want to try to do something, you know? All right. So, again, very short topic there. Basically, just to summarize, what do you need to take away from this data between the US, the UK, and Europe? Essentially, Sony's they're just slowly and stably, you know, moving forward. There is some growth in the US, which is good, probably very good to Sony because that's their most important market. In the UK and Europe, things are slowing down a little bit. So, yeah, everything's fine. Basically, that's the major takeaway. The PS5 is doing fine, and we'll check in again on this data next quarter. I want to go over this next topic with you again pretty briefly, but just to clear something up. I didn't even know this was a controversy, apparently. It says from PlayStation Lifestyle, Sony accused of hiking PlayStation Store prices, but there's more to the story. We've noticed some online chatter about Sony hiking up PlayStation Store game prices in some regions over the last day or two, which have unfortunately spawned some misleading headlines. The controversy stems from a single tweet regarding a price increase in Turkey, with some bizarre claims being thrown around. Ex-user Synth Potato shared a screenshot of Assassin's Creed Shadows PlayStation Store page in Turkey, which shows that the game costs approximately $85. The price was allegedly increased this month, and the game is about $25 to $30 cheaper on Xbox and PC at present. For starters, third-party game prices are set by their respective publishers, not Sony. This has been confirmed numerous times in the past and was reiterated by a number of developers in response to Synth Potato's tweet. Secondly, Turkey has seen record inflation in recent years with continuous weakening of its currency, so simply converting lira to dollar on Google doesn't tell the full story, nor is setting global prices a task as simple as using a currency conversion calculator. Taxes and costs of doing business vary from region to region. Last but not least, for a very long time, players living in strong economies have been taking advantage of weaker currencies by finding workarounds to purchase games in countries like Turkey for cheap. This practice has also been heavily promoted by websites dedicated to video game deals. That said, we don't think this is specifically the main reason behind the price hike. While we can't comment on Xbox's pricing strategy, games are traditionally cheaper on PC. We also don't know if Microsoft and Valve have yet to update their respective storefronts or not. Whatever the case, accusing Sony of price abuse in a poor country is preposterous. So again, I didn't even think that I didn't think that this was a I didn't even know about this, to be honest. But John Linneman replied to the situation saying, a friend of mine just returned from Turkey, and I was also surprised at the food prices. On average, they were 2 to 3 times more expensive than here in Germany. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. Seems like some economies in certain countries are just really starting to tank. But I did see at least one person bring this up on my last stream. I had no idea what they were talking about. So that's why when I came across this article, I was like, I guess I'll look into this and see what's going on. You're saying you're going to holiday to Turkey alone for the rest? You don't know? Yeah, report back to us and let us know if it's really that bad. All right, so we do have a couple of bonus topics. We're going to run through these very quickly, and then we're going to move over to the Members Lounge, okay? So guys, keep in mind, as we are finishing up these last topics, feel free to become a channel member or drop any membership gifts if you like. The Members Lounge goes live right after this finishes up. But, boss, you can't go on the desk, bro. Hold on. Let me escort the cat back to his treat. There you go. I don't know. I'm wondering if he's going to enjoy being up there. Like, cats like to be in high places, right? Well, maybe not Boss, though. Boss is like, nah, bro. Don't do it. You're not coming on my desk, man. So, quickly, bonus topic. Phantom Blade Zero. They put out a post, the official Phantom Blade Zero Twitter account. Didn't get much attention, but I know a lot of you guys are looking forward to this game. I am as well. They say, here's a highlight from Phantom Blade Zero at Billy Billy World. Thank you to all the players who participated and experienced the game. Please forgive us as the current demo is not yet available for large-scale testing. This combat-centric demo was designed to showcase the core mechanics as seen in the trailer and to get feedback on the gameplay. Our goal here is to build and test the game. Afterwards, we will repeat the entire process to provide the best experience for players in the final published game. Stay tuned for further updates on the demo and game. This year, you can get hands-on with the game at the following events: Gamescom in Cologne and Tokyo Game Show in September, from September 26th to 29th. We look forward to seeing you there. So they're saying here, stay tuned for further updates on the demo. I'm assuming they're probably getting a bunch of feedback from the demo that they're showing off at these events. Another bonus topic here. Again, I'm just kind of running through these here, and some of them we'll probably cover more extensively in a video tomorrow. It says developer 1047 Games has officially announced Splitgate 2 with a release window of 2025 as well as a cinematic trailer. The trailer may not include gameplay, but it does showcase the potential mechanics, weapons, cosmetics, and stages. It also concludes by revealing the platforms for the anticipated sequel. Splitgate 2 will be available on PC via Steam and Epic Game Store. It will also release on consoles via the PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Series X and S. My God, we're still getting PS4 game announcements. Dude, we are still getting last-gen game announcements. Holy shit. Fans can wishlist the game now. And so, yeah, do you guys remember this game, Splitgate? If I remember correctly, this game came out of nowhere a couple of years ago, and it was basically people were like, this is kind of like Halo. And I remember it was playable on PlayStation, and it blew up for a little bit, and it got really big. So I guess that they've been working on a sequel. Boss just tried, like, he just tried to jump on my desk. Like, I know you didn't see it, but he was just like, he did that thing where he did like a little hop, but then he realized he wouldn't make it. Have you ever seen videos of cats doing that when they like are trying to gauge whether they can make the jump, and at the last second they realize they can't, so they just do this like little bunny hop? But anyway, yeah, this game Splitgate 2, I saw the trailer drop, and it's a first-person shooter. Kind of wild to me that it's getting a PS4 and Xbox One release. Like I'm pretty shocked about that. Oh wow. Don't mind me. I'm just gonna brush Boss a little bit here because my God, he has fur going everywhere, and I can't deal with it. Halo and Portal. This is how we end the stream. He's getting angry at me, though. He's like aggressively licking me. He's like, stop. You gonna start biting? Look at him. Don't bite me. I'm trying to help you. Brush that boy. Look at that. Thought I was kidding. Look at that hair. Look at that fur. That's crazy. How old is he? He's 6 years old. So I guess he's like technically in his prime. All right, we have one last topic to go over here briefly. This one's kind of sad. This is being reported by Insider Gaming. It says the developers of Mortal Kombat have been hit with mass layoffs as the entire NetherRealm Studio mobile team has been let go. First spotted via Reset Error, posts began appearing on LinkedIn stating that they were being let go and the team was let go. Good morning, Internet. Unfortunately, yesterday, NetherRealm's mobile team was shut down. Quality assurance analyst Tony Lazar posted a ton of very talented people were put out of work. It hurts me to announce I've been laid off from NetherRealm Studios after about 10 years of working there. NetherRealm Studios is owned by Warner Bros. Games. Insider Gaming has reached out to both NetherRealm and Warner Bros. For comments. So, yeah, I thought that this was worth pointing out because when I first saw this, I did get a little bit worried. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's unfortunate no matter what, but I was kind of worried. I was like, holy shit, like, what's going on at NetherRealm? And it is the mobile team. So, like, look, obviously it sucks, but I'm glad in a way that the main team working on, you know, the console Mortal Kombat games, and I don't know if they're going to do another Injustice or not. I was kind of happy to hear that they were like, as of right now, I think they're okay. But yeah, I honestly kind of forgot that there was a mobile version of Mortal Kombat, and I think there's a mobile version of Injustice as well. Warner Bros. Really went all in with that. So yeah, I haven't played Injustice in a long time. But guys, here's what we're going to do. That pretty much wraps everything up topic-wise. Again, really, really, really slow time in gaming right now. There's like basically no news. So I'm surprised we got as much out of this as we did. But what we're going to do is we're going to hang out here for a couple more minutes. I'll probably let it go to the 3-hour mark and we'll end it there. And we are going to move over to the members lounge. Okay. We're going to hang out there for a little while. So if you are a channel member, please stay tuned. As soon as this stream ends, the lounge is going to go up. And again, we'll just kind of make this a last call. Any other fan funding or donations you want to make, whether it be a membership gift, or super chat, feel free to do so. Oh, boss, what are you doing, man? No, don't, boss. No. Okay, hold on. Boss, don't you do it. You can't come up here. If it's this difficult for you to find a way up here, it's because you're not meant to be up here, bro. What did I react to in the last members lounge? I reacted to a lot of Eric Andre stuff. And then at the very end, I reacted to something. It was some YouTuber, and it was just really raunchy. And I got to be much more careful because it got age restricted and copyrighted within minutes after it ending. And I was like, okay, I can't risk, having my channel hit with that type of stuff too frequently. Yeah, that was my bad. Concord gameplay incoming. I don't know if my members want that. Truthfully, I don't know if people would be excited to watch Concord gameplay in a members lounge. Apparently, I'm really bad at Concord anyway. Not even a single rumor about the showcase. Yeah, it's eerily quiet out here, man. You're joking? Oh, okay. Sometimes it's hard to tell. You should do those streams on an MBG extra YouTube. Yeah, I don't know. I've tried doing something with like MBG Plus or having a second channel, but I just don't know that it really works. Like, I don't think my channel's big enough to justify that. Boss, please, let go. Are you serious? No, stop it. Stop. Guys, we need to hit 25 members right now so we can feed Boss. Do you see the way he's acting? Right now. Somebody drop a 20 bomb right now. God. Stop. Look at this cat. Have I ever rode a jet ski? No, I can't say I have. What budget do I think Sony gave Sucker Punch for Ghost 2? I think they gave them a much bigger budget. Probably like at least 150 million this time. Yeah, I definitely think so. 150 million, maybe more, dude. I think they earned it. Ghost of Tsushima was a huge success. Here, Plague. You got it. Do you want some catnip? I'll give him some catnip. Come on. There. It's right here. Yeah, it's the good stuff. It's the good stuff, boss. Oh, crap. I'm getting it everywhere now. We have a super chat from PlayStation Pete. He says, buying Astrobot day one. If the PS5 Pro delay is to fall 2025, then PlayStation 6 2030. 60% towards finishing Stellar Blade. Good stuff, PlayStation Pete. I'm glad to hear you're making some serious progress with Stellar Blade. Yeah, I think if the PS5 Pro is delayed, it's definitely not going to be delayed to holiday 2025. The latest I could see the Pro being delayed is March 2025. Definitely not holiday. At that point, I think it would get canceled. But Astrobot, day one PS5, absolutely. Absolutely, man. Mr. Bill says, MBG, is mayonnaise an instrument? Is mayonnaise an instrument? Legendary SpongeBob episode, man. Legendary. But guys, we are about to hit the 3-hour mark. So once again, if you are a channel member, if you have that badge next to your name, look out. The members lounge is going up right after this. We're going to hang out there for a little bit. But before I go, I want to give everybody a big thank you. If you tuned in live, thank you so much. If you're somebody who watched after the fact, thank you as well. I want to make sure I give a special thank you and shout out to everybody who became a channel member or gifted memberships, and also everybody who dropped a super chat. Really appreciate the support. Again, I know there's not a whole lot going on right now, so for those of you who are still showing up, still showing support, just know it means more than you know. Literally could not do this without that support. So thank you guys so much. Also want to make sure I give a shout out to Devil Shooter. He does the timestamps for the streams. If you see him in the comments, show him some thanks. I know he really, really appreciates it. But guys, that does it. My last request is on your way out, hit that like button. And again, to all my members, I will catch you in the lounge. And to everybody else, I will catch you in the next stream, which it should be happening on Sunday. So I'll see you then, all right? Till then, take care, everyone.